Welcome to Manhwa Recaps, spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. Huge shout out and special thanks to the channel members. The manhwa starts by introducing us to Shinye County, specifically the Young Manor. We see an elf checking a baby's pulse and then lets out a sigh of relief. The father asks how his son is, and the elf says it will be hard for the baby to live past 20 years old, as that's the type of constitution he has. We learn the father is the patriarch of the Young family, and his name is Deem Young. He asks if it's punishment from the heavens because he's a child that caused his mother to die due to birth. The elf looks annoyed and can't believe he's asking his physician that. He asks how he could say that to one of his own children, specifically one that will die young. He explains that it's similar to the 9 yin severed meridians, and never in his life has he seen anybody with their upper acupoint open to such an extreme. The elf continues explaining that if the Baihu acupoint is too open, one will die soon. People usually call that deity ascension. Deem Young asks if he means the thing Taoists that are very powerful do when they depart for the heavenly realm. The elf asks why he believes that nonsense, and he doesn't know if he's heard of absolute martial masters using the upper meridians of their heads, but that's them using the Baihu acupoints. That is the so-called deity ascension. When somebody gets too drunk on the energy of the great nature that came from the heavens and earth and dies because they could not withstand it, Deem Young glances down at his son, who looks super cheery, and then he stands up and begins to walk away, saying it seems that he's right and that this is heavenly punishment. The elf asks how he could call himself a father, and Deem Young tells him it's time for him to leave and he'll get the chief stewardess to pass his pay to him. The elf says that he doesn't need it and walks away hella angry. He says that if he had grown up in the unorthodox sect or the demonic faction, he would have become the heavenly demon. If he had grown up in the Shaolin Temple, he would have been able to use the 72 elite training methods of the Shaolin Temple 2 times over, but yet he was born as a hated child in a place unbefitting of his talents, and he'll die in the countryside young without any way to survive. He tips his hat to the stars, saying unless he achieves enlightenment on his own, that is. About 2 decades later, at the Young Manor, Deem Young has aged considerably. He says ever since his deceased father, a disciple of the Zhongnan sect, Sum Geomja, founded this clan, he's dedicated his whole life to focus on the revival. If their clan becomes famous throughout the world, he will have inherited the ultimate technique of the Zhongnan sect, so he does not plan to close down the business. He's really glad that at least his son followed in his deceased father's footsteps and managed to join the Zhongnan sect. Everybody starts congratulating one of the sons for his achievement, and Deem Young tells everybody to raise their glasses. One of the sons looks around and says that Yonshin isn't here yet, and Deem Young looks annoyed, saying that he told him to stay at the training ground, as it's better for him to not be here when it is such a joyous occasion, as he would bring ill omens. The man looks worried that his brother is being treated like this. In the training hall, we see a blue aura, and the baby from the start has now grown up, and he is practicing martial arts. A wave of energy swirls up from his feet, and his eyes open wide as he exerts it, sending a shockwave across the training room. That shit looks clean. He looks down at his hand, saying finally he's completely mastered the Young clan's movement art, and with this movement art, he can stimulate his muscles with energy and compress it, and that his body cannot get any stronger than it is now, and he wonders if it will make his lifespan longer. He starts to think about the movement art, and we see him telling his older brother that he created it. It wasn't from scratch though, and he simply remodeled their clan's exclusive martial art. His brother thinks about it and tells him not to take it the wrong way, but it would be better if he did not tell anybody about this. Yonshin asks why, and we see him telling his brother who got into the Zhongnan clan. He asks what he would do if he experienced energy deviation while learning it and died, and if he will take responsibility. Yonshin made a face as if he did something wrong, and then even Deem Young was yelling at him, asking how dare he mess with the clan's movement and the clan's martial arts, asking if he thinks he is the founder or something. Again, Yonshin makes a face as if he did something wrong, and he turns away. A clan founder is someone who creates martial arts and is the founder of a martial group. He's never thought of himself as anyone like that, and he never thought about creating martial arts. He just wanted to become healthy and live with everybody for as long as he possibly could because he loves his family. He hears some people outside saying that it's about time they arrived, and he wonders where they're all going, and then he recalls that today is the day the martial masters of the Zhongnan clan visit. The Zhongnan sect is one of the 9 great sects in the world, one of the twin walls that are known as the strongest groups in Shanxi, along with the Manhua sect, the place where the sword deities are at. And he wants to meet them in person. We see him asking somebody a couple of nights before, if there's a reason that he can't show his face to the clan guest, suggesting maybe it's because he caused his mother's death. The assistant tells him it's only the patriarch's order, and Deem Young wonders why his father ordered it. The assistant then apologizes to him, and Yonshin looks sad. He begins to walk forward, saying maybe if he sees it from afar it'll be okay, and he's sure he'll be able to learn something from such skilled masters. The gates open up as a lot of the family's practitioners and servants wonder who's coming in, saying that maybe it won't be the Sky Sword Dragon, but at least an elder, and it would be a real honor for their clan if one of them were to visit. We see Deem Young and the family all ready to greet them, and somebody yells saying they're coming in. In the back of the crowd, Yeonchin watches with the servants. A woman begins to enter, and as soon as she takes a step in, the air changes, and everybody notices her ears, as she is called a noble race, aka an elf. Yeonchin explains that the noble race is known in books to be a mysterious race that can live on forever, and humans think of them as deities, and that energy around her is the core energy condensed in one's body, but it's being exuded naturally from her. Everybody is surprised, and Deem Young says he's utterly honored that they would visit their shabby clan and laughs, and he introduces himself to her. She's grateful for such a warm welcome, and she introduces herself as Yo Il Shin, an elder of the sect. Deem Young is surprised that she would be an elder since she looks so young, and then bows, as so does everybody else, and he says he is sorry for not being able to recognize the deity in front of him. She tells him to raise his head because she's not here to boast her status. He continues laughing nervously, saying she's come such a long way, and he apologizes for this respect once more, and he can't believe he kept one of the sword deities of the Jongnan sect waiting outside, and he'll quickly let her in. Yeonchin is just curious about how long she has lived, and she begins to follow Deem Young. While she's walking forward, she can feel Yeonchin glaring at her, and she looks over at him. He's surprised that they made eye contact, and he quickly greets her. Deem Young wonders why she stopped and turned, and says that that is his third son. Il Shin says that he has really bright eyes, and he looks smart, and Deem Young laughs, saying he's sorry, but his third son is not very mannered. She asks what he means, and Deem Young says that it's embarrassing, but he's a troublemaker in the family. Yeonchin just heads back to the training area, saying that he has gained a new perspective after seeing her energy. He had nowhere else to climb after training in his clan's movement arts, and he was wondering what he should do, and he unsheathes his blade, looking at it, saying he guesses it would be good to try training with swords. As the night begins to fall, Il Shin's servants say this place is better than they thought, and with this much earth energy, the Tyrant Sword tribe would want this place. Il Shin says they'll definitely come here, so it'll be good for them to plan a counterattack, but that'll result in the sacrifice of this entire clan. Her servants ask why they don't just attack them before they cross the walls, and she thinks it would be nice if that happened, but she explains to them that within the Tyrant Sword tribe, there are those known as the 13 Skies, and they're all hella strong just by themselves, and they shouldn't let their guards down, and they need to keep their sword aura sharp. She takes a sip of her tea, as she can't stop thinking about Yeonchin, saying that he clearly stood out among them, and she finds it strange. We see a blue aura from the training hall that night. As Yeonchin is still there meditating, and he feels his Baihu acupoint open on the top of his head, and he wonders why it's so open. Although he wasn't able to meditate for a year, since he focused on training his body via his clan's movement arts, the amount of energy that goes through his head has gotten even greater than before. At this rate, he thinks he'll have less than 5 years before he loses consciousness, and if that happens, that means he has less than 5 years to live, because it would lead to him in a vegetative state. A chill runs down his spine as he genuinely feels terrified. He opens the training hall and walks outside, looking up at the moon, saying even though he's completely mastered his clan's movement arts, he can't stop this. He then suddenly senses something, which makes him no longer feel relaxed as he glares over, wondering what's going on, as there is an ominous energy from the other side of the wall. He grabs his blade and quickly runs over, saying something's off, and the closer he gets, the stronger the scent of blood is. It is also way too quiet. He sees an orange barrier blocking the door and heads straight through it, saying that it is a trap formation. He then immediately stops running as he is surprised by what he sees: all of the clan's practitioners and servants dead on the floor, as they have been brutally murdered. He says that he can't believe he didn't realize something like this was happening within the manor. He makes his way through the bodies, saying it must have been because of the trap formation. As one of the servants' faces is filled with fear, as there are still tears on her face, he closes her eyes, wondering if the culprits are that much stronger than everybody else. He hears a voice saying that he can't believe somebody's alive, and they call him a fool, saying if he managed to stay alive, he should have just stayed hidden instead of crawling out. The whole group looks over, saying that they guess he just got unlucky and they should send him to the afterlife. They all have red hair except the bald dude. Yeonchin glances up at them, and Baldy says he's only killing him because he was ordered to, so don't blame him for this. He begins to concentrate his aura into his hand, but Yeonchin doesn't plan to let this happen. He quickly gets into his stance as Baldy comes in with a palm strike. Yonshin grabs onto the back of the man's arm, and the man immediately realizes this is bad, as Yonshin crushes the bones in his arm with just pure strength alone, causing the man's arm to rotate and warp as he lets out a scream. But Yonshin's facial expression does not change as the man drops to the floor in pure agony. Everybody looks worried as they turn to see their comrade holding his pretzel-fied arm. Yonshin begins to release his energy now, and they unsheath their blades, asking who he is while sweating nervously. He holds up his blade, saying he is the third son of this clan. Yonshin begins to slowly walk forward as he is releasing bluish lightning from his feet. Baldy begins to stand up and starts yelling at him. He goes to palm strike with his other hand, calling him a bastard. Before he can even react, Yonshin quickly lobs his head off. Baldy didn't even react to it, as all he sees is Yonshin's body tilting sideways. Bro got ahead of himself for real. The other red-haired dudes are all surprised at how fast he drew his blade. But of course, Yonshin doesn't give them time to act, as he uses something called the Scripture of Origin ability, cutting off another one's head. One of the men screams instead of swinging his sword. Yonshin capitalizes on that, cutting him diagonally in half. He then charges at the final two. One of them raises his blade but loses his arm. The other loses his head. Yonshin turns around to finish the guy whose arm he cut off and thrusts his sword forward, stabbing the man straight through the chest. The man looks at the blade in fear, but Yonshin just looks pissed. He pulls the blade out, and the blood from all the bodies begins to fly out as it happened so quickly they couldn't even react to the movements in front of them. They all drop to the floor in perfect unison. Yonshin walks back out to the servants and sighs, saying this was his first time training the delightful sword, but he gets how it works now. He hears a voice saying that's pretty impressive, and he looks over as a new group of people are walking in, and he's confused. One of the men says, but it's not really much to write home about, as these are all idiots and they lost because they let their guard down. Yonshin wonders what's the deal with them as they're wearing a different uniform. But the man continues yapping, saying it's still a little surprising, asking how he could be so good despite his young age, asking if he trained the delightful sword all his life. Yonshin asks if they are from the Bloodflame cult, and he says no, those are the dudes he just killed, and they are from the Tyrant Sword tribe. He can't believe both of them are here. He explains that the 13 Skies are said to be the most powerful and cruel groups in all of Muram. He can't believe that both of them, which are part of the 13 Skies, would be here together. He asks what business the two organizations of the 13 Skies would have here. Bandana Bro says it's none of his business, and Yonshin smirks. He says this since they are answering his questions rather than attacking him. He wonders if they know about him. Bandana asks what he means and just stands there waiting for his reply. Yonshin asks if he knows that his family is a part of the Desolate Fortress, the best branch sect in Muram. That's why if they kill him, it would be a pain for them even if they are a part of the Tyrant Sword tribe. But before they can even answer him, a giant explosion is seen from the wall as a man gets sent flying through the air. We get a better look as he is one of the dudes from the Jongnan sect, and Yonshin surprised that the assistant is spitting up blood. He then looks up to see Il Shin flying in from above, dodging an attack. She glances down at him, and he wonders what's going on. She manages to regain her footing but is clearly pained as she uses her sword for stability to stay upright. Her ear is bleeding. He says if one of the sword deities is in such a pitiful state, the enemy must be quite powerful. A man begins to come from the other side of the wall, and a chill instantly runs down Yonshin's spine. Il Shin looks up as we see a man levitating over the wall. He slowly starts to descend and walk forward while releasing a dark purple aura. Yonshin wonders who this is as there is a very strong dark energy around the man. As if the man exudes pure death energy, something akin to the human embodiment of it. Yonshin wonders who he is. Mr. Bandana and his brothers are also surprised. The man glances over at Yonshin, which makes his head feels light just from the eye contact. Bandana instantly gets on his knees, greeting the tribe leader, as do the rest. Yonshin says he can't believe that the Tyrant Sword tribe leader is here. He is the man who reigns over the Tyrant Sword tribe. He is considered a harbinger of disasters here in Jianghu. He wonders why a man who is considered an equal to a patriarch of one of the 9 great sects is in a place like this. He looks over at Il Shin and her assistant, who is heavily injured, and says either way, at this rate, they are as good as dead. He lets out a long-winded sigh and says he might as well test himself if he is going to go out. He stomps off the ground, destroying it, charging forward extremely quickly using his aura. Bandana is caught off guard as he didn't expect such movements. Yonshin readies his blade, and Bandana goes to unsheath his, but he is too slow as Yonshin already thrusts forward, stabbing him through his chest as he couldn't even react. Both Il Shin and the tyrant tribe leader are just watching. Bandana draws his final breath, and then Yonshin lets his corpse-onde sword fall forward, then asks the tribe leader if he thinks he can kill him even if he were to do something like this in his face. Everybody else draws their blades, calling him a bastard, but the tribe leader says that's enough and that his spirit is better than all of those here combined, and everybody is just surprised, even Il Shin. His men realize that if he is praising the enemy, this is pretty bad, and the tribe leader says that he will let him live, and Yonshin says it's more like he can't kill him. He reaches for his blade, pulling it out of Bandana, saying because he knows that he is the only grandson of the former Divine Sword Squad, and leader of the Desolate Fortress. Il Shin is surprised about who Yonshin's grandfather is and says that he is the best in the Desolate Fortress. The tribe leader says that it's definitely not a good idea to get involved with the Desolate Fortress, but that is not the reason that he is letting him live and that he just likes him. And if he didn't have any connections to the fortress, he'd have made him his disciple. Il Shin and his men are surprised that he is rating him this highly. The tribe leader raises his sword and stabs him to the ground, saying that he will give him one day to leave this place. He does not permit any other sects or clans to set foot on this land. He slowly walks away after saying what he has to. He then stops for a second and turns, saying that he will always be open to have a duel with Yonshin, and he can come and find him when he is ready to get revenge. Yonshin just continues to mean mug him, even as he exits the manor. He starts to paint a vivid image in his mind of his back. Something for him to chase after. Yonshin finally makes his way inside and looks down at his father, who is struggling to breathe. Yonshin tells his father that he is here. His father stretches his hand up towards him, asking why he is so strong and how he lived. Yonshin tells his father that it is due to the movement art that he created and mastered. His father is surprised that he created it. He recalls back to when he tried telling him before and how he just yelled at him, asking if it was from back then. Yonshin says yes. His father looks up, realizing how much of a fool he was. He says that it is the sacred art created by the Young clan. He begins to cry, saying that he was so ignorant and foolish as he overlooked the fact that his third son created a sacred art. He tightens his grip on Yonshin's hand and says that he definitely has the qualities of a founder as tears roll down his face. Yonshin looks down at him with sad eyes, and his father's eyes begin to lose focus. As his final words acknowledge that he was his son, he then closes his eyes. Yonshin realizes now that his father has passed, and his brother starts to scream out for his father as Yonshin stands up. We see the assistant holding his younger sister, and he calls out to Yonshin. Yonshin asks how his sister, is, and the steward says that she is safe. She is just sleeping after her acupoint got blocked. It seems it was blocked to knock her out. She was hidden so the killers wouldn't find her. Unlike everybody else, Yonshin looks down at his family's corpses and calls out to his brother, saying that he needs to raise Heya in the Jongnan sect. She has an exceptional affinity with the 5 elements, so they'll definitely take her in. His brother asks about him, and Yonshin says that he'll look after himself. Il Shin then calls out to him, and they make eye contact. He asks if she's leaving now, and she says yes. Now that the Tyrant Sword tribe has gotten involved, she must report this to the sect without delay. She asks Yonshin what he's going to do and if he is going to the Desolate Fortress where his mother is from. He says yes, as he doesn't have anywhere else to go where he can grow stronger. She asks how about he come back with her to Jongnan Mountain, as she would strongly recommend it. He says that he is truly honored to receive an offer from an elder of one of the great sects. She then adds on that she intends to recommend that he become the sect leader's disciple. His eyes immediately change, and her assistants are surprised too. He asks if that's even possible, and she says it would be possible only for him. He wonders why, and he explains that the direct disciple of the Jongnan sect leader would be able to learn the absolute sacred art of the clan, and that the leader is one of the top 10 martial masters in the entire world. He puts his hands together, saying that he won't forget the kindness that she has shown him, but he must apologize. She sighs then smiles, telling him not to worry about it, saying that she simply wanted someone talented like him, and that's probably what the Tyrant Sword tribe leader thought too. He says again to forgive him, but she says it's fine and that the doors of the sect will always be open for him. Hopefully, he remembers that. He looks hesitant, but then says he has a question for her. He says that he knows she's one of the older people among the noble races, and he asks if she knows of the method to get the fruit of the world tree. She's surprised and goes to ask him something, but of course we need more plot. We learn that the fruit of the world tree is protected by the Desolate Fortress leader, whom the Emperor has acknowledged as the king and a peer. It is said to give eternal life and youth to those who eat it. It is a treasure of the heavens. So surely, if he ate that, his lifespan would increase, so he would be able to live longer than 5 years. She says that she hasn't even lived half her own lifespan, so she has no authority over the world tree. All she knows is that the desolate fortress leader is able to give people that. He says in that case he must go there. She warns him that it won't be an easy journey, as it's a sacred item even for her and her noble race. He says he doesn't know any other way, so it can't be helped. All he can do is become the divine sword squad leader and achieve great feats. She puts her hands together out of respect, saying that she'll cheer him on from afar. She turns, saying that she needs to take her leave to update the sect. She says her assistant, the cliff swordsman, and the neutral spirit fist, who looks like a fish, will help clean up this place. And then she heads out, and he pays respect to her once more. Morning finally comes and shines down at the manor as we see they dug graves in the woods. He thanks both of the assistants, saying he's glad that they helped. They say it's all for the sake of the clan and that they played a part in this tragedy after all. Yeonshin's brother then calls out to him. He looks really regretful. He says an apology won't cut it for everything that has happened to him and the clan. When they meet again, he'll try to be an older brother to make up for his shortcomings so far, and he hopes that he'll do his best to survive. Yeonshin warns his brother that he is not exceptional, at least that's the way he sees it, and he's going to have to train like his life depends on it. His brother doesn't even get angry and says that he'll remember his words. Yeonshin looks down at his sister, never mind that's his niece, and he tells his brother to protect her. He then asks the chief steward where he is going, and he says there are small branches of the Jung clan in various places, and since the bloodline of the clan is alive, he'll look after the remaining assets. Yeonshin then says he knows he's heading to the desolate fortress and he hopes they can meet from time to time. Since the steward knows martial arts, he'll be of help, and the steward bows, calling him master. Yeonshin says that he hopes he lives a comfortable life and he should take care of himself. The steward's surprised by his kind words, and then Yeonshin turns, taking his leave from the group. The steward still can't believe what he just heard and wonders if anybody else in the Jung clan has ever said something like that to him. It jumps to Yangyang as we see the city streets bustling, and Yeonshin is being shown upstairs at an inn. He makes his way to a table, puts his bag down, and glances over at the city, saying that he's finally here. In the distance, we see the desolate fortress, and we hear some men in the other room saying that the fortress is truly incredible. People from all over the Central Plains would gather here with big dreams due to them. The boss of this inn struck the jackpot, and he says he's completely out of liquor to sell. Another one says it's been really chaotic in the restaurant these days. The martial artists that come in here to take their entrance exams are always drunk. Yeonshin wonders if there is such a thing as an entrance exam to the fortress. Somebody approaches him, asking if he is here to take part in it. His name is Han Wanchang. They stare at each other for a second, and Yeonshin asks if he is, but doesn't answer his question. The man says he forgot to introduce himself, and he is fascinated to see a challenger younger than himself. He says he is from a very faraway city in the outskirts of Shanxi. Yeonshin introduces himself as well and where he is from. The guy says since he came from somewhere nearby, his journey must have been easy, and explains how he had to fight green forest bandits and swim against the pirates of the pirate fortress. And that their water martial arts were legit aids to deal with. Yeonshin starts to get flashbacks as we see his sword is bloodied and there were bandits on the ground in fear. But he slept peacefully. He takes a sip of his drink, saying his journey was indeed pretty easy. Wanchang turns around and begins to look around the inn, saying they should become friends and share information about the test if they have any. Yeonshin asks what he means by test, and Wanchang looks a little confused, saying it is known as the Desolate Fortress Trial and is quite different from the usual martial arts tests. Just as how those who want to become a government official must be well versed in both martial arts and literature, there is a test for joining the Desolate Fortress, which is why so many people are gathered here. No matter if you have foundations or not, the moment you join them, opportunities and teaching will be provided to you, and it's no wonder that everybody is trying to come here. There are countless people who have learned various martial arts so that they can pass the test as well. Yeonshin sets his cup down, saying that people would say that if you want to take on the world with just one weapon, go to the Desolate Fortress, since the imperial family that rolls over the Central Plains would make their move in order to control the martial arts groups. All of the elixirs and advanced martial arts gathered from all over the world are waiting inside of the fortress. Wanchang says that some people say that the great sects with traditions are better, but they don't know anything. Asking how could martial groups created by mere commoners be stronger than the fortress? If that's possible, they would be able to create an empire. Yeonshin says he sees, and Wanchang continues, saying almost nobody has been able to pass the fortress trial in one try. The chances are 1 in 1,000. They are usually next generation leaders or reputable martial arts clans that are rising in the world and gaining fame. That brings him to this, asking if he would like to take the test with him tomorrow. Yeonshin agrees, and Wanchang is just surprised by how easygoing he is. He says that he knows it might be confusing on his first try. Bro continues to show that he is fluent in Japanese. Yeonshin instantly tunes him out and looks off towards the fortress, saying that he is glad he can join as long as he passes the test. He didn't want to ask his mother's family for help since he doesn't know where they live or what they look like. The next day, we see a flag raised high in the sky as Yeonshin and Wanchang are walking towards the fortress. Wanchang says it's time to go. Yeonshin is excited to see what the desolate fortress will hold for him. Later, we see Yeonshin being given a plaque, and someone says that he's number 13. Yeonshin says okay and looks around at the competition, gauging them as there are also people there to judge. Wanchang starts to explain that the first exam is just about getting the supervisor to accept your plaque, but you'll fail if he tells you to return it to the receptionist. The second exam is a tournament. Yeonshin asks if there's a third, and Wanchang thinks about it, saying it's an interview with the fortress's lord. Yeonshin is surprised by that, asking if he really means with the lord himself. Wanchang says yes. Then explains that there are martial artists who come to Yangyang just for that chance. A conversation with an absolute master like him is an incredible opportunity, and they hope to receive some kind of profound understanding from talking to him. Yeonshin looks at the tournament and says that he'll take note of that. One of the interviewers says the first exam is about swift sword arts, and to demonstrate one swing with the fastest sword technique you own, and he shall watch and judge it. Wanchang immediately yells, saying he'll go first, and the receptionist gives him approval. Wanchang says he got nervous and did it. Yeonshin says this seems simple enough. Wanchang begins to draw his blade, and Yeonshin says he's got a well-polished spirit. He can tell he's strong and he's even stronger than some of the vagabonds he saw on the way here. Wanchang exhales and then quickly draws his blade, swinging it horizontally, leaving a little bit of smoke in the air too. Some of the spectators say this man is a bit different, and they didn't even see him swing, only the smoke from after it. Wanchang audibly gulps, looking up at the judge, wondering what he will say. The judge thinks about it and says it's not bad, telling him to give him his plaque. Wanchang's happy and then thanks him. Wanchang gives Yeonshin the thumbs up, telling him good luck. Yeonshin doesn't look worried at all, and he slowly walks up. Some of the people in the crowd are surprised that he's so young, and they compliment his guts, asking if he's from another province, as where else would he be able to show sword techniques in front of a martial artist of the desolate fortress? Even receiving one piece of advice is incredibly precious. Yeonshin stops walking and looks at the judge and nods his head, as does the judge, who tells him that he may begin. Yeonshin immediately opens his eyes as the aura gets tense, and we see his blade is already behind him. His aura begins to disperse, and then immediately a strong gust of wind follows. The judge is left impressed, everyone else is confused, wondering what is going on. Yeonshin looks at his blade, and the crowd starts to ask when the hell the sword moved. Wanchang is left speechless. The judge wonders what to say as well and then says that the future of the desolate fortress is right here as Yeonshin sheathes his blade. Everyone is surprised at how highly he is being valued, and the judge tells him to hand over his plaque. He looks at it, maybe the number is important, or he's just remembering which people stood out. Telling him to be on his way. He calls for the next one up, and Yeonshin takes his leave as Wanchang quickly follows from behind and asks if he is perhaps the son of a famous family. Yeonshin asks if that changes anything, saying that after entering the desolate fortress, he heard that all that matters is martial arts talent and effort. Wanchang asks if he really plans on passing the trial, and Yeonshin says surely that's why everyone else is here. Not just him, but Wanchang as well. Wanchang says that he's right and then bows, saying that he'll be on his way, thanking him, and then leaves with a very serious expression. All Yeonshin wishes for is that Wanchang passes the second exam too. Back at the inn, Yeonshin is meditating with the windows open. He remembers Wanchang saying the second exam is a tournament where you compete against others with martial arts and he has 3 weeks until the second exam. Considering how close it is, the correct choice is to train his skills. He will train his movement arts, his rapid sword arts, as well as his scripture of origin and focus on strengthening his movement technique. He trains until the sun fades out, and then we get a whole 3-week time skip. A man from the fortress is leading Yeonshin and the rest of the pack, saying until they are called, examinees should wait here. He heads towards a door and opens it. While everybody else watches, some of them say it even makes them feel discouraged, and they heard that the white martial arts outfit signifies an elementary level martial artist, but yet his energy is so strong, and it's obvious that even just wearing white means your future is guaranteed. Wanchang calls out to Yeonshin and asks if he's gotten taller. Yeonshin says that he also looks like he's much healthier, and Wanchang says that he did accomplish something, tapping his chest. He looks down at Yeonshin, saying he would like him to remember that winning is not what's important in this exam. Even just having one of the 2 matches of the tournament is enough to catch the eye of one of the masters who will be watching. Although that's the hardest part. Turns out Bro has already failed. Yeonshin asks if that means you can win a match and still fail, and Wanchang says yes. The problem is that the exam supervisors are going to have a higher standard today. Yeonshin asks why, and Wanchang says he heard that the White Keelan is competing at the trial today. Yeonshin asks if he means the White Keelan from Namgung, and Wanchang says yes, and we learn that he wiped out a notorious group of bandits before he was even 15. He also beheaded the swords master of an unorthodox faction called the Shrouded Assassin. Wanchang continues, saying there were even rumors that he defeated all of the upcoming fighters at the 8th Great Family's Dragon and Phoenix tournament when he was only 18. Yeonshin asks what he's lacking if he already has such high martial prowess. Why is he trying to join the Desolate Fortress? Wanchang tells him that it's because he's the child of a concubine, so he can't become the patriarch, and if one rises to the position of the Desolate Fortress's Lord's Captain, it's of a similar standing to a patriarch of the 8th Great Families. As the Desolate Fortress maintains the order of Zhonghu in the Central Plains, after all. Yeonshin gives him a look as if he understands, and then the examiner quickly calls out for Yeonshin to step up. Wanchang looks nervous, but Yeonshin does not, and he says that he hopes to see him again here inside the fortress. Wanchang is surprised and then screams yes as Yeonshin walks forward. Inside, there are martial masters of all types ready to watch the fight. Yeonshin's opponent draws his blade, but of course, Yeonshin only watches, and the judge announces to begin. The man begins to laugh, and Yeonshin wonders what's the deal. The man says not even knowing his final destination is mere despair, and he must be a moth that's struggling around a flame. Bro is a Miriam Shakespeare. He goes to ask Yeonshin if he knows who he is, only to have his face get absolutely dented because Yeonshin hit him with the sheath of his blade, sending him flying. The man thuds onto the ground. Bro is fugly, and Yeonshin is just confused that it was so easy. They quickly start dragging the Ugo away as Yeonshin watches. The other martial artists don't really seem interested in the fight, and then one man smiles, walking forward, asking if he can begin now. Yeonshin wonders what's going on, as the man looks very different from the last guy. Yeonshin realizes this must be where his test begins as they are now in the middle of the ring together with the judges. Some men in the back say finally, and they wonder who will take him, as the squad leaders are going to be fighting over him. Some of them say he's even stronger than they are, and they would not expect any less from a Namgung. Yeonshin realizes based on the name that this guy must be the White Keelan, and the spectators wonder if they are going to be able to witness the Boundless Heaven technique today. Yeonshin says that he looks like he's 5 years older than he is, but it's not a level that he can't reach. Thanks to his family's martial techniques, he is more fit than he is, but he is below him in other aspects. The man puts his hands together and introduces himself as Namgung Hwashin, and he says that he's mainly trained in the Boundless Heaven technique and the Infinite Steps, and he unsheathes his blade, telling him it's nice to meet him. Yeonshin does the same by putting his hands together and says that he's trained in the Jung movement art. Hwashin is then confused, asking him if he's not going to draw his blade. Yeonshin puts his hand on it and then rotates his body, giving him a glare as if he is ready. The man then gives a nod as he understands, and then starts to channel aura into his blade. Yeonshin readies himself, saying that the main essence of the technique he has been practicing recently is unpredictability. An unexpected main attack in the midst of an unpredictable rhythm, and if it works, he should be able to get him to let his guard down. Yeonshin sits there waiting for the moment as the air begins to get really tense with everybody watching in anticipation. The judge yells to begin, and then immediately we hear their swords collide as Yeonshin's blade gets broken and is sent flying across the room. Yeonshin continues glaring at Hwashin, who looks a bit taken aback by the speed. Hwashin's sword falls onto the ground, and everybody is confused, wondering what that was. They all say that Hwashin won so fast, and that shit was crazy, but some other people start to have a very different view and look nervous. Hwashin looks down at his blade and realizes and points it to the ground, admitting that he has lost. Yeonshin is surprised, and some of the other martial masters ask him what he means. The men from earlier say that Yeonshin's sword was hella scary and that he is definitely younger than Hwashin too, wondering if maybe he can't use true energy with his techniques yet, and that they didn't know that there was a hidden master and they are scared of what he will become. The judge asks him if his name was Yeonshin, and he says yes. He then points, saying there is another garden if you go north from here and to wait there. Yeonshin says okay and then puts his hands together, telling Hwashin he would love it if they could duel another time. Hwashin says that's what he was about to say too and he looks forward to it. Yeonshin looks at him as if he learned something, then quickly heads out of the building. We see other people already waiting, and they all look back at him, surprised that somebody so young passed, and they thought that Hwashin would get in first. Yeonshin says that he knew there would be no chance of winning if the fight dragged on, which is why he is the most extreme form of the delightful sword. However, because Hwashin's sword was imbued with his true energy, his broke. It was a failure on his end for being too rash with his attack, but for him to admit his defeat, he guesses that is the nobleness of a renowned family. He recalls how the others mentioned that he can't use true energy. We learn that the Jung clan is a third-rate branch clan, and if there was someone in the household that knew how to use such a skill, there was no way he would not have learned it. However, he knows it now, and he realizes how it should be used the moment he witnessed it. As he looks down at his hand, he begins to imbue his aura into his sword, saying he understands now that it isn't just simply putting the energy into it. He can use the true energy as a medium to become one with the sword. As it begins to vibrate rapidly, everybody hears the sound and looks over. I wonder if it sounds like a lightsaber, and they recognize it as sword resonation, saying that's impossible as he is so young, as we see it beginning to send out pulses of aura that are cued with the sound, and it kind of sounds like sonar. Yeonshin says the sensation is as if his sword and body are united, and this must be body-sword unification. Bro is built different. Yeonshin wonders about the new techniques he'll be able to use while in this state. As the aura begins to dissipate, he slowly opens his eyes and smiles while looking at his blade. Hwashin then congratulates him on his enlightenment, as we see him standing beside him. Yeonshin is confused as he notices he has his hand on his blade, and that the rest are watching intently. He wonders if he was protecting him for fear that somebody might get in the way of his enlightenment. He tells Hwashin that he wasn't aware that he was protecting him and thanks him, congratulating him on passing the fortress trial, calling him Sir Namgung. Hwashin's taken aback and lets out a very loud laugh. Wan Chang says that he's here too, reminding him that he exists and he's not just a side character. Yeonshin congratulates him too, and Wan Chang does the same. He asks if he knows that he's gotten a nickname. Yeonshin asks what he means. Wan Chang explains that when someone has shown exceptional prowess or attracted attention, people would give them a nickname and call them by it. Unless it's someone who commits an atrocious or evil deed, most nicknames represent a huge honor for martial artists, just like Cliff Swordsman, the Neutral Spirit Fist, and the White Chi Lin. Hwashin says that he heard about it too, and Yeonshin is confused, thinking all he did was take a trial. Hwashin tells him that they call him the Lightning Genius. Yeonshin is surprised, but Hwashin explains that it is based on his talent of lightning. It's even more impressive that the martial artists of the Desolate Fortress are calling him that, which means that it's basically his nickname in the entirety of Jianghu now. Yeonshin asks if he's sure they're not just mocking someone who's young and a little fast with his sword. Hwashin asks what he means by a little fast, saying that if he said that was just a little bit, yet he could barely react, he wonders how slow that would make him. Yeonshin says that it's a name that he wouldn't have even dreamed of when he was doing the horse stance in the manor, and it doesn't have a bad ring to it. Somebody yells, telling everybody to gather around, saying only one trial remains. If they pass it, they'll join the fortress. Yeonshin looks ready and glares up at the pagoda, saying that he's about to meet a living piece of history and one of the strongest martial masters, or rather, maybe even the strongest. Everybody heads inside and then comes out looking absolutely defeated. They laced his shit with fentanyl. Wan Chang looks worried, as the guy just zombies his way past them. Wan Chang says everybody's coming out pretty fast, and he wonders if the leader is just looking at their faces while talking. Yet another zombie, followed by yet another one. And finally, Yeonshin is called, and he turns. Walking towards the door, Wan Chang looks worried. Yeonshin says they told him to keep going until the top, and he slowly starts heading up the steps one by one until he's greeted with a giant door. It somehow opens automatically, and Yeonshin begins to walk forward as he sees all sorts of decorations around the room. He then begins to feel a strange presence and looks up, surprised, as we see a green-haired person in a chair. He wonders if this is the leader that is meant to be the strongest in the world, and he introduces himself to her. The person then turns, and it is yet another elf. Yeonshin waits to hear what she has to say, but all she does is glare at him, saying that he is of that child's bloodline. He asks what she means and if maybe she knows his mother. Her expression quickly changes, and she says it seems like he already knows what she means and that he is pretty bold. Yeonshin doesn't even tremble, and she takes note of this, and he says that he is the grandson of the former Divine Sword Squad leader. She says that he's about to become a part of the Elder Council soon, and he's someone who is very obstinate. She continues glancing at him, saying that he seems to have a wound. He says it's nothing to be concerned about, and it's just trivial family matters. She says they aren't trivial, and it's just covered by his trained body, and he will probably live for around 15 years. She nods her head, saying it's true that this isn't something an outsider should comment on, and he should go seek out his grandfather first. He apologizes, but he says the transcendent air she carries as someone with absolute strength is a separate matter from her trying to interfere with his family matters. She smiles and sticks her foot out, slowly getting up from the chair, saying that she likes him. It's interesting that he doesn't bow down to anyone, even though he came here because he has something he wants. He's surprised, wondering how she knows what he wants, saying that maybe she found out that his upper meridian is abnormally wide, and he decides to go for it, asking if the fruit of the world tree would save him. She says while the facts about it aren't all inaccurate, he begins to grow more nervous, but she says yes, it's possible for him to get what he wants, and he says that he knew it, asking if he can get it. She tells him it depends on what he does. He sighs out of relief, saying that's good enough for him and thanks her. Then he remembers that this is a trial, asking if he is a martial artist of the fortress now. She smiles, saying yes and he may leave, and calls him the next Divine Sword Squad leader. He looks to see if she's jesting or not, and she gives him a soft, but warm smile, and as he's leaving, he says that he doesn't know if she's teasing him or not, or if she really sees the potential. He then turns, saying maybe she's inferring that he can get the fruit of the world tree if he becomes the Divine Squad leader. And if that's the case, at least he has a goal. It then jumps to Hwashin and an old guy, as well as Wan Chang looking all smug, and Yonshin, who just looks curious. They're all following one of the men from the desolate fortress, who says that only the 4 of them have passed. He asks if they know what kind of work the desolate fortress does. Wan Chang says that it's to stop all the Murim martial masters from overthrowing the imperial family. The man says that while he's correct, it's not what they mainly do, but it's just one of the major things they do. And there's something else. That is, they prevent or suppress a certain size of conflict from happening in the entirety of Jianghu. The rest realize that that's a lot more than they initially thought. The dude continues, saying that no one knows what would happen when a fight in Jianghu breaks out, after all. A bloodstorm swept across the central plains on the day there were rumors that the heavenly demon's grave was discovered. It would be fine if the fight was contained to those who covet manuals of ultimate martial arts or elixirs, but the heinous deeds of these vicious martial artists are ignored if they affect anyone else around them. And a lot of commoners lost their lives. And when they witness that hellish sight, the empire becomes unrecognizable. Wan Chang looks a bit angry and regretful, saying that it's the disaster of the heavenly demon's grave. The other dude continues the conversation, saying that it has been 17 years since, and the unorthodox sect and demonic factions aren't the only problems. All orthodox groups, including the 9th great sects and 8th great clans, would also become problems. If they leave them be, the people will suffer. Thus, if there's unrest among the people, and taxes aren't paid on time, then the reign of the empire will have problems, and that is why the imperial family provides them with huge amounts of money, elixirs, manuals, and martial masters. He then stops walking and turns, telling them all that this is what they'll be doing here at the desolate fortress, and they must sever the heads of any martial artist that disrupts the lives of normal people. And this is the true weight they must carry. They're all caught off guard by this answer, besides Hwashin, who is low-key locked in. Not really sure if Yonshin is caught off guard or not, or if he expected as much. The dude then clears his throat, saying that they'll all be staying here from now on, and after a while, they'll be assigned to a place and be moved to the accommodations for that area. And he wishes them all the best. Sometime later at night, there are flies inside of the room swarming the lamp, and we see Yonshin on his bed, asking if it's been a week. He says he's getting assigned later than he expected. As we see him practicing his meditation, Wan Chang knocks on the door, asking if he can enter. Yonshin says yes, and Wan Chang does so. Yonshin asks what's the matter. As Wan Chang approaches him, he says that it's finally been decided where they're going, and they're going to the Radiant Demon Squad, which is a combat squad. Yonshin says the name is familiar to him, and Wan Chang asks if he's heard the rumors. Yonshin says no, and Wan Chang tells him that the 17th Combat Squad captains under the Divine Sword Squad fought each other in order to take in new warriors. Yonshin is confused, because aren't all the combat squad captains the martial masters that represent the fortress, so why are they sparring with one another? Wan Chang laughs, saying that's right, and it was in order to recruit the White Qilin and the Lightning Genius. Yonshin doesn't even say anything, and it skips to the next day at the arena of the Radiant Demon Squad, and we see them standing inside of it, wearing their new uniforms, and Wan Chang is in love with his. We see some of the other members as well. watching from the outside, and one of the dudes is low-key a freak, saying they're cute. We are introduced to the squad captain named Ma Jin. Yeonshin says there were talks about him being the strongest amongst the 17 squad captains, and seeing him in person tells him that it's not just a rumor. Ma Jin gets right into their faces and calls out to Yeonshin, calling him the lightning genius. Yeonshin says yes, sir, and Ma Jin continues to glare at him, but Yeonshin's gaze never shifts, and then he starts smirking, saying that he has backbone, and people like him won't die that easily. And that combat squad is under the desolate fortress. The divine squad is basically like one of the sects in the central plane. The two of them will learn martial arts in the Radiant Demon Squad and execute missions, and everybody here are their seniors. Wan Chang tells Ma Jin that he has a question. Ma Jin says to go for it, and Wan Chang thanks him for allowing him the chance, and asks if that means learning martial arts in the Radiant Demon Squad means that everyone shares their martial arts. Ma Jin says not really, and those you learn by yourself belong to you. Only the martial arts of the Radiant Demon Squad will be taught here. Wan Chang starts pogging out of his gourd, saying that he can't believe he's going to be learning the famous Radiant Demon arts. Ma Jin says he's going to need to work hard to learn them if he wants to survive. Yeonshin says he's heard of their martial arts before. He explains how their squad is one of the more famous ones among the 17, because they were able to fight the Plum Blossom Swordsmen, the elite 24 swordsmen of the Manhwa sect, without any casualties, and that incident gave even more credibility to the rumors saying that the desolate fortress is the strongest in the world. Ma Jin says that while they are affiliated with the imperial family, attacks on the martial artists of the desolate fortress do not constitute treason, and this is why they must learn whatever they can hear and become stronger. Yeonshin says that doesn't really make sense, asking why it's not treason. Ma Jin makes an expression as if it wasn't that bad of a question and tells him that there are many eccentric people here in Zhonghu. Numerous have lost their minds due to learning demonic arts, or they are exceptionally skilled in mobility arts and could mess with government officials before escaping to the high mountains and deep valleys. That is why the dignity of the imperial family isn't applied to them, since their job isn't to act like government officials, but to actually fight other martial artists. Therefore, like he's been saying to them over and over, if they do not become stronger, they will die. He then turns to the side, saying that the guy who got slashed by the Namgung's strongest swordsman while out on a mission would be able to give them a better description of that. The dude says that he must be talking about the king-style sword arts, and that it was an incredibly scary one as he lifts up his bandana a bit. Yeonshin says that the king-style sword arts is known to be one of the strongest styles of swordsmanship in the world, and it is a supreme martial art only learned by the main descendants of the Namgung clan, and that the Namgung's strongest swordsman is meant to be the strongest martial master in the entirety of China. Ma Jin looks pissed, and the dude sighs, saying okay, and walks over, but Yeonshin can't believe he fought such a skilled master and came back alive. The dude says that he'll start with the lightning genius, and he heard that his swift sword arts are pretty exceptional, and he wants to take a better look at them. Yeonshin understands what this means and starts to walk in front of him. He then grabs onto his sword and starts to release his aura. As it pulsates around the ground, the rest are surprised by this, and we even see some smiles in the crowd. Ma Jin and Wan Chang as well are surprised. As Yeonshin continues to pulse out his blue, lightning-like aura, like how he was given the nickname, the dude smiles and grabs onto his blade, and Yeonshin watches as he unsheathes it, and he puts it on his back. He introduces himself, saying that his name is Chung Myung, and he was born and raised in Zhongyang. Yeonshin introduces himself, saying that he is from Xinye County. Chung Myung says he sees and can't believe a place has a genius such as himself, and they have a WWE stare down. Chung Myung says that you can feel wind being produced even if it's a 10-year-old kid using the tri-sword technique. That's why, while fighting, you can find out how one swings their sword. Yeonshin wonders what he means by wind, and Chung Myung continues, saying that making it this far at such a young age means he's quite talented. And he can't wait for him to show him that talent, as we see some kind of heat emanating off his blade. Yeonshin continues, saying that he wants to see his talent with his sword. And Yeonshin says okay, as he starts to lock in by grabbing closer to the top of the hilt. Everybody's surprised that he's demonstrating sword resonance, and even Ma Jin is as well, as we see it pulsing off of the ground beneath him like he demonstrated before. Yeonshin stares at Chung Myung, who is laughing at this, but I believe that is an amused laugh. Yeonshin tells himself to focus. And all he sees is white in front of him. He says that he can feel his opponent's breathing with his energy detection, as he starts doing exactly that. As the only sound we hear is Chung Myung breathing in and breathing out. Yeonshin waits longer while listening to the sounds, and then opens his eyes widely, saying, "Right now," as he stomps the floor and dashes forward directly towards Chung Myung. As he starts to slowly unsheath his blade using the swift sword arts, he swings towards Chung Myung's arm, but Chung Myung reacts with ample time, knocking him backwards, causing him to lose balance. Yeonshin looks confused, but Chung Myung expected as much and starts smiling. Yeonshin wonders when exactly he raised his blade, as he starts to backpedal to create distance. After going far enough, we see him imbuing his foot with some aura as he slams it into the ground, saying that he's a martial master who survived against the strongest swordsman in Namgung, so he expected as much. If he keeps that consideration in mind, this is the most likely outcome, as he's coming back in for round 2. Chung Myung starts to swing down towards his head, and Yeonshin sidesteps it, only catching a few of his hairs as he strays. We see him now behind Chung Myung, as he's in a lunging stance. He slams into the ground, regaining his posture, and starts to swing his blade upwards, which Chung Myung manages to block too. Chung Myung looks surprised, because he probably did better than he expected. Yeonshin just stays laser focused, wondering what's going to happen next. We see Chung Myung's body starting to move slightly, until the point that he's completely gone from in front of him. Yeonshin is surprised by this, but knows that he's going to be coming in for an attack. He dodges forward as it comes in from behind him. We see that was just a feint, as Chung Myung is now preparing the follow-up with his sword raised high. He readies himself, but Yeonshin does as well. As Chung Myung's swing comes in, Yeonshin dodges underneath it while raising up his own attack, and keeps eye contact directly with Chung Myung. As Chung Myung leans his head backwards, we see his bandana get cut, but he dodges the attack, doing a backflip through the air, revealing that he is actually a fairy, as we see his ears. He lands on the ground in front of Yeonshin. The entire room is just eerily silent, as they stare at one another. Everybody looks surprised, as they didn't expect this level of a fight from somebody who just joined. Even Ma Jin was completely engrossed in it. Wan Chang looks like he dropped a log in his pants. We see Yeonshin readying for the next bout of blows. But he notices Chung Myung is taking a pretty relaxed stance, and he says, as expected of the noble race. We see him letting out a sigh. Yeonshin lowers his sword as well, misunderstanding that he wants to end this with one final attack. He says that he'll use the limit releasing technique on his sword, which used to be called the origin ability. He then realizes something strange, as he looks around the room and everybody's just staring, dumbfounded, with their jaws dropped, and he wonders why they're making such expressions. Even Chung Myung looks bewildered. Yeonshin lowers his blade and asks Chung Myung what he thinks of it. Chung Myung is surprised, asking what he means. Yeonshin says that he knows he went easy on him, but to please be honest. Chung Myung starts to think about it, and then asks him how old he said he was again. Yeonshin's a bit annoyed, but says he's 15, asking why it's that important. He says their enemies won't go easy on him just because of age, and that skills are the most important thing right now. Of course, Yeonshin's misunderstanding, as Chung Myung is just confused on how a 15-year-old is this strong. And Yeonshin says that he's already going to have a short life to begin with, so there's no meaning in talking about age. Everybody else is also just under the same impression as Chung Myung, saying that for him to be so skilled at 15 is absolutely crazy, and he must be some mistake from the heavens. They've been to the Dragon Phoenix Summit a few times, but they've never seen anything remotely close, and they doubt that you can become like that even if you've learned the instinct honing arts from birth. Some of the younger people in the group say that they thought they were the most talented in their city, and it turns out they were just a frog in a well. But Yeonshin's still just trying to gauge the situation. And we see Wan Chang still just unable to even speak, and Bro might have died, but Ma Jin's come to some sort of conclusion. Chung Myung laughs and sheathes his blade, while Yeonshin's still looking around the room. Maybe Bro doesn't realize how strong he is. It then jumps to Wan Chang screaming very loudly, while everybody else laughs at him. And we see Ma Jin's hand imbued with aura. As Wan Chang is holding onto his chest while leaning over, Ma Jin says it's commendable that he's still standing rather than being laid out on the ground. And he should go back now and solidify what he's learned. Wan Chang says, "Yes, sir," and he starts to wobble off. As Ma Jin looks to his side, he spots Yeonshin training, and that he is laser focused. Even with all of Wanchang's yapping, he tells him that he's done too, asking if he's understood the point of the steps. Yeonshin says, yes, and it's to think and act in a seamless manner. Ma Jin says that's right, and there's always a way for him to move, regardless of the situation. The true crux of the Radiant Demon Arts is to move seamlessly without disrupting the path of his attacks. And he must now understand the deeper meaning of the path of attacks too. Yeonshin asks what he means by the deeper meaning of the path, and Ma Jin thinks about it, saying it'd be better and faster to show it to him. He stands in front of one of the lanterns and tells him to look carefully as he puts his hand onto it. They watch, wondering what's going to happen, as his hand starts to steam with a blue aura. It kicks up a bunch of dust beneath him as he starts to release it, to the point that it even sends his hair flying up as well. He then takes in a deep breath, and we see his entire body look like it drops a little bit, and Yeonshin's noticed this as well, saying that he's completely relaxed even though he's releasing his aura, which is pretty unique. Ma Jin slowly raises his hand into the air, and then, once he's right by his face, he punches forward, and it's super fast and smooth, shattering the pillar in one clean strike. As it falls to the floor, everybody's impressed, as they expected as much from their squad leader. Wanchang asks how the hell his hand isn't hurting, and Ma Jin explains that the strongest attack at the perfect timing is what the path of attack is. If you follow a perfect path of attack, then the most powerful attack will be unleashed. Yeonshin says that means they need to grasp the timing of unleashing their strength. Ma Jin says although he's shown it to them, he's not asking them to do this immediately, because this isn't something you can master after just seeing it once, and this is something you have to go through your entire life to learn. Yeonshin asks if that's really the case, because he thinks he could do it right now though. He then walks past Ma Jin, and Ma Jin wonders what he's doing, and if he's really about to give this a try. Yeonshin stands in front of the other lantern, saying that the essence of core energy is the great nature. He exhales and says that just following its lead would be sufficient enough. He starts to use his body sword unification and says that he's going to slowly relax just the same way Ma Jin did. He closes his eyes and then opens them after taking in a quick breath. He starts to see the world a bit differently now. There are lines all over this lantern and even in the air around it, and he sees a bright circle directly in the middle of it. He raises his blade while it's still in its sheath, and then thrusts it forward directly towards the core of the lantern, hitting it, causing it to crack slightly. And then immediately, that crack starts to grow until it completely shatters just from him tapping it with the sheath. As it falls over, he smiles, saying that he's understood the deeper meaning of the path now, and he's learned all of the Radiant Demon Arts, so he just needs to continue training to be able to use it in a real fight from now on. He turns, smiling, wondering what the reactions are going to be, and everybody's just sitting there like, what the hell? Yeonshin says that he showed an unsightly side of himself since it's his first time trying this, and he still needs to experience many more real fights before he can use it properly. And if he wants to use the Radiant Demon Arts in an instant where life and death is on the line, normal practice like this won't work. Everybody else is just confused, bro, because he actually has no idea how strong he is. Yeonshin thanks him for his teachings, and Ma Jin kind of sits there, not sure what to say, and then comes up with something, saying it looks like he has to think about how he should teach him from now on. Yeonshin wonders if that means it's going to get harder or not. The next day, we hear Wanchang asking if he heard that their seniors had a huge fight with the Heavenly Squad. Yeonshin looks up at him, asking what he means, saying that he thought the Desolate Fortress was pretty strict with its rules. From what he remembers, fighting outside of training grounds is a punishable offense for martial artists of the Desolate Fortress, asking why they fought. Wanchang says that it's pretty simple, and that one of the Heavenly Squad members picked a fight in a restaurant. He says something along the lines of how Yeonshin's talent wouldn't be able to blossom within the Radiant Demon Squad. And Yeonshin asks if they really fought over something as measly as that. Wanchang says that he just doesn't know what Miram is like, and this is its true face. Something that doesn't seem like a big deal could provoke someone to raise their sword against you. And the streets place great value in the process of stopping that sword and winning in that situation. Yeonshin says surely, they're more angry that they just insulted the squad instead. And then thinks about it, saying this could be an opportunity. If he wants to get the fruit of the world tree, which all the noble races of this world worship, he needs to accomplish something, and he'll need help from the others in the process of doing so. And while the best way to gain the trust of a martial artist is to owe each other their life, It's not a bad idea to make a good impression on squad members first. He then stands up, saying that after some thinking, he thinks what he said was right, and if the seniors are really fighting because of him, he can't let that go, and he'll go pay them a visit. Wan Chang is surprised by this and watches as Yeonchan walks away, and saying that he knew he was a chivalrous person who knows the code of a martial artist. Yeonchan wonders if this is really something considered chivalrous as he appears in front of the Radiant Squad once more. Everybody wonders what they're doing here since the newbies don't have a lesson today, and if they really came to train anyway, saying they sure are working hard. But of course, we know Yeonchan has ulterior motives, and he starts to walk up towards Ma Jin. And the other dudes tell him that they should go enjoy their day off, and though it is commendable they want to work, they want to train. Yeonchan and Wan Chang both greet Ma Jin, and Ma Jin asks if they ran into problems or something. Yeonchan says that he wants to have a spar. Ma Jin says if that's the case, he could choose anyone, and they'll spar with him. And Yeonchan says he doesn't want to do it against his own squad, and he would like to spar against the Heavenly Squad instead. Everybody's surprised by this, even Wan Chang didn't expect it, and Ma Jin smiles, saying that it seems he's caught wind of what happened yesterday, and there's no need to get too worked up over that. Yeonchan says he's not really worked up though, and he just would like to be able to see the heavenly sword arts, which he's admired for a long time. Ma Jin can tell that he's genuine about it, and says that it's too late for him to say something like that, and it seems he's too agitated, but it's not a bad idea, because see, this means that he is getting worked up about his seniors. Yeonchan says he would like to spar and show that the Radiant Demon Arts are a great martial art, and he asks for Ma Jin to please allow him to do that. Of course, he just wants to gain fighting experience with his newfound martial arts and leave a good impression on his seniors, and he would be killing 3 birds with 1 stone, because he could also maybe learn the Heavenly Squad's arts as well. Ma Jin says that he has needed to learn the same kind of martial arts as the Heavenly Squad, nor has he fought in a battle together with them, and while it might be a spar, there's no reason for them to go easy on him. And Yeonchan says that's exactly what he is hoping for. Then he puts on an angry face, even though he isn't. Everybody's surprised, because they take the bait, and they can't believe that the newbies this worked up. And they say that's the spirit befitting of a martial artist at the desolate fortress, and they would love to see what he's like after he grows up. And they continue just going crazy. Ma Jin thinks about it after a bit, and says fine, and he'll pass on the message to the Heavenly Squad for him. It jumps to the Heavenly Squad arena as we see Yeonchan standing in front of a blue robe. The other members of the squad say that they can't believe a white robe is challenging a blue one, and it's supposed to be like a guidance fight for the sake of learning. And they wonder how many attacks he'll even endure. Whatever the case is, the longest he would last would be around 10 bouts, and it seems a lot of people seem to have this consensus. One of the men says that there's no way a newly joined white robe is going to even last 10 against a blue robe. The blue robe himself clicks his tongue, thinks about it, and says he can't see that happening either. We are then introduced to the Heavenly Squad captain, who is named Han Cholmok. Ma Jin is sitting beside him, and they have awkward silence for a few seconds. Cholmok points his hand forward, saying that if that brat lasts 10 bouts, he'll give one of the Heavenly Squad's elixirs. Ma Jin is surprised by this, saying that an elixir is too much to place as a bet. Cholmok asks if he's scared to lose. Ma Jin says don't provoke him, as the desolate fortress's elixirs aren't something that can be used frivolously. Cholmok says the honor of the Radiant Demon Squad and the Heavenly Squad is on the line, asking how that's frivolous at all. Ma Jin sighs but agrees, saying he accepts it. Cholmok smiles and takes a seat, and he says as the leader of the group, they must trust their own people. Ma Jin starts to smirk because he knows what's going to happen. The blue-robed dude walks forward, double-checking that Yeonchan is the lightning genius. He says yes while introducing himself. He then looks up, saying that a blue-robe warrior means that there's someone who advanced from where he is currently. However, not everybody becomes a blue robe, and there are also people who take more than 10 years to become one. The blue robe warriors of the desolate fortress are people who won't lose even to the pinnacle martial masters who represent the major martial sect. The man says he's trained in the heavenly sword arts for 20 years. While swords are said to have no eyes, the swords of masters do. Despite that, he won't be showing mercy in his duel. He better keep that in mind. Yeonchan gives him a quick alright, and the dude can't believe he gave him such a cool speech just to get that reply. He then draws his blade, and as soon as he unsheathes it, we see a blue glow around it as the air around him starts to tense up immediately. Everybody else in the room feels this as well. It turns out this dude might be way more powerful than what we originally thought. Yonshin just can't wait to see what kind of sword style this guy uses as a blue robe of the Heavenly Squad. He then smirks, saying that he should throw away any unnecessary thoughts. As he grabs onto his sword's handle, he unsheathes his as well, saying no matter what kind of style he uses, he will simply use his own to win. The man says that he'll let him have the first attack, telling him to go ahead and come at him. Yonshin uses his limit releasing technique, dashing forward at insane speeds, and swings upwards, which the man blocks. The dude is surprised by the attack, saying that he's actually way faster than he thought. Yonshin then thrusts his blade forward, which the man deflects with the side of his. This continues over and over, with the man deflecting each and every one of Yonshin's attacks. But it gives him no chance to counter. Chalmok looks a bit nervous, asking if that's really the speed of a white robe. Of course, Ma Jin smiles, because he knew this would happen. Seeing that level of skill at this age inevitably takes one's breath away. However, with his skills, if he doesn't make use of the opportunity, then he won't be able to win. Yonshin takes a half step forward to get closer, which the man notices, as Yonshin's thrusts are speeding up more and more. To the point where the dude actually has to open his eyes to block them, and he starts to sweat nervously. Yonshin explains that now that he's able to use this technique and not overexert himself, he's definitely gotten stronger than before he entered this place. He now has his physical body trained with his own movement arts and the principles of martial arts to begin with. The more inclined the sword trajectory is, the more back muscles it uses. We see him take a big step forward, and he starts to pivot, saying that every step he uses, he needs to use core energy to turn, creating rotational force. This time he swings at a diagonal upwards, which knocks the blue robe sword up into the air. Everybody's surprised by this, because they realize that this white robe is actually putting up one hell of a fight. Yonshin then twists his body, going for a counterattack while the dude's sword is high in the air. Leaving him defenseless, Yonshin comes in with his attacks, saying that he has also learned another move. The dude lowers his blade to block the attack, and Yonshin smiles, because this is what he anticipated, as we see the dude's sword flying through the air. It's now on the ground behind him, because he knocked it out of his hands as he was using the guy's own opening as bait. He then points the blade directly towards the dude's throat. The dude's just surprised that he lost like this, and Yonshin lets out a sigh of relief while everybody else is in disbelief about what they just witnessed. Chalmok looks pissed, because he just lost his elixir, but of course, Ma Jin expected this. The members of the Heavenly Squad are just shocked, whereas the Radiant Squad all knew their boy had that dog in him. They start cheering for Yonshin as he's looking down at his blade. Happy with himself, he sheathes it, and the blue robe just sits there, holding onto his wrist. Yonshin, though, thinks that he only won because he got lucky, and he had overwhelming momentum as the dude was taken by surprise, and if they fought again, the results would be different. He thanks the man for giving him the opportunity to observe such high-level swordsmanship, and the dude smiles while walking away towards his blade. He picks it up off the ground, saying that he was surprised by his sword's trajectory and rotational force, and he possesses martial prowess beyond his years. On top of being so young, he possesses martial prowess that's unfathomable, and the Radiant Demon Squad has found a treasure that he truly is envious of. Ma Jin sticks out his hand for Chalmok to give him the elixir, and Yonshin says that he's going to name this new technique the Energy Accumulation Discharge. Ma Jin approaches him, holding onto a box, and tosses it up towards him. Yonshin sticks his hands out, catching it, wondering what this is, and Ma Jin smirks, saying that it's an elixir of the Heavenly Squad, and that he has earned it. Some time later, we see all the members of the Radiant Demon Squad, specifically the blue robes guarding a building which is probably where Yonshin will be absorbing energy. We hear a woman talking to Chung Myung, who says he's such a monster, and she can't believe he defeated a skilled swordsman like Aquan so easily. We are introduced to Baek Myrieo. Myrieo says even so, he's hardworking, humble, and polite, and he's also really good at seeing through martial arts. Chung Myung says that it's definitely a talent they've never seen before, and she explains that whenever she uses a technique while sparring, he would somehow be able to apply the same principle in a different posture. In addition, the way he executes it is much more precise as well, and she would hate to use exclusive martial arts in front of him, as he's got some kind of innate talent for reinterpreting martial arts. Chung Myung says he does, and it's as if he learned them a long time ago, and that he is a real monster. Ma Jin says he doesn't know how much of the elixir he'll be able to draw out, as usually, people would absorb about 60 to 70% of it, but depending on the situation, it could be less than that. If he acts recklessly, because he feels like he's absorbing less, he could damage his energy core or blood vessels, so he shouldn't be too obsessed with absorbing it. Yeonshin says yes. Ma Jin continues, saying the way to consume an elixir is to allow the elixir to flow into your core energy, and circulate that energy endlessly until it is melted completely. He'll step in and help if his energy circulation becomes unstable, so he shouldn't get surprised by that and adapt accordingly. Yeonshin puts it to his mouth, saying alright, and then slides it in. He says he feels energy increasing just as the elixir entered his body. We see it pulsating around his core, as there is a golden light reflecting the same color as the elixir, and it begins to spread throughout his meridians. As the air around Yeonshin starts to snap due to the pressure, we see the box of the elixir get pushed away. Ma Jin stands behind him, watching intently, as Yeonshin starts circulating the aura around his body, doing his best to not disturb the flow of the elixir. Chung Myung and Myri Ao both notice this change in the air, saying they must have started by now, and she's curious to know how much stronger he'll get after eating the elixir. As the sun starts to settle, it does some sick transition into Yeonshin's core. As we see, more of the elixir is still being absorbed by him. I'm not sure how much he's going to absorb, but since he has plot armor, I would say about 100%. This panel is also really cool. We see him starting to sweat, and Ma Jin is still staring at him, making sure that it's going smoothly, and he says that he heard he is absorbing an elixir for the first time, yet his circulation is extremely natural. There's absolutely no need for him to help at all here. So he pretty much has been standing on guard all day. The air starts to lose the tension that it had before, as the cultivation must be done, because even the aura is starting to fade out. Yeonshin then slowly opens his eyes, and looks down at his hands, as we see a golden light around them. Ma Jin sighs, saying that it looks like he's completely absorbed it, and Yeonshin says the newly obtained energy seems pretty strong. Ma Jin did not expect him to absorb the entire thing, and not only that, he did it without any help. Yeonshin's eyes open widely, and he says that now that he has more energy, he can detect presences that he didn't previously. His seniors are surrounding this place, and they were protecting him because he would be vulnerable while absorbing the elixir. He wonders if this is normal, so Yeonshin asks Ma Jin if this is really the case, and Ma Jin smiles. Yeonshin finds it a bit odd, so he calls out to Ma Jin, who turns towards him, and he asks why everybody is being so nice to him. Ma Jin smirks, saying that they're not just taking special care of him, and this is because he's a part of their squad. This is done for every member. It's something that becomes natural once you risk your life a few times in the Murim, as your squad members are comrades that you'll fight life and death with. And the stronger he becomes, the better it is for the squad as well. Since it means the rest of them will have better chances of survival as well. Chung Myung tells everybody it's time to leave, and as they start doing so, Yeonshin is still just surprised, wondering if this is how it really is. If you recall, he was not treated great in his family. That night, back in his room, we see him in lotus position on his bed, as he is checking his core, double-checking how much of the energy he's retained. He says that he has way more than he did last time, but to the point where he had before, it can't compare to this. He just wanted to check out how much stronger his martial arts have become now as well, so he heads to the training area. Myri Ao spots him, asking what he's doing here, and he calls her the Zen Sword Demon, as that is her nickname. She sighs, asking if he really came out to train because he couldn't take it anymore. He says yes, and she says that she also realized something after seeing his fight. He asks her what she learned, saying congratulations, and she tells him it was only a small move. And she's sorry if he had planned to train, but asks if he would like to spar. He says he can train alone anytime, but it's a rare opportunity to be able to spar with somebody such as herself. Again, he calls her by her title, and she says to just call her Myri Ao instead, as that's more than enough. He smiles, and then they take their stances across from each other. He draws his blades, saying he'll make the first move. As she starts to get into her stance, she raises her fingers, telling him to go ahead and start. He understands, and starts thrusting forward, just like he did against Aquan. She easily sidesteps the attack, grabbing onto his palm, and gets right close to his face, which surprises him. She pulls his arm to the side, and comes in with the follow-up attack of her palm, straight to his chest, sending out a shockwave through the back. He didn't expect this kind of counterattack from her, and as she comes in with a follow-up left, she rears it back while exhaling, and he starts to imbue his own hand with aura while stretching it forward to block her attack. Even though he does his best to do so, it's still too much for him, as it instantly shatters the protective aura he had, sending him backwards a little bit. He seems to be thinking about something, as she says that he truly is scary. He asks if she trained to use the 1-inch strike, and she says yes. As a swordsman that has learned the radiant demon arts can't use only swords, so the 1-inch strike is very useful in close combat. In order to deal with the energies mixed in their bodies, you need to destroy the enhanced protection energy. After using core energy and the burst discharge to increase tension, the 1-inch strike really becomes more efficient. He seems to have a different opinion, asking if he's allowed to speak freely, even though he's new. She tells him to go for it, and he says that he's been more sensitive when it comes to detecting energy since he was young, and the way she used her core energy attracted his attention. She's just surprised, and they kind of sit there in awkward silence for a second, and she asks if he was really able to detect the movement of her core energy. He says that he wasn't, and she asks how he was able to know the movement of her core energy then. He says he can't see the core energy that's within her body, he was only able to see the flow of the burst discharge, and the waves of core energy that were generated on the outside. She tells him that's still really hard to believe, as even purple robe martial masters may not have energy detection skills at that level. He explains the significance of the purple robe martial masters, because in order, it goes white, blue, black, and purple. And purple means they are at the top of the hierarchy of the desolate fortress, even above people like Ma Jin. She says although she guesses it's possible if it's him, she'll listen to his advice. He says that her palm strike seems to be more suited for puncturing than the 1-inch strike. She asks what he means, and he looks down at his hand, wondering how to explain it. He says while it may seem more suited for the 1-inch strike, perhaps because of the way she discharges her energy, it would be way more powerful if she were to use it with the puncturing technique instead. She then starts to seem a little offended, asking if he really thinks she's some kind of idiot that can't even use something as simple as the puncturing technique, asking if he thinks that's the reason she didn't use it. He can tell that he pissed her off a little bit, and sits there and apologizes right after, saying that he said something unnecessary. She immediately tells him that she's sorry instead, and thanks him for his advice as she walks away. But he's still sure what he said is correct. A bit later, we hear Mireio talking to Ma Jin, saying that the lightning genius figured out her martial arts, asking if he ever told him about the origins of them. He asks what she's yapping about, and why he would tell him something that important. She then wonders how exactly he figured it out then. Ma Jin asks if it seems he had figured out that she tweaked the lost martial arts, the heavenly demon's sacred arts. She says it did seem like that. Ma Jin then smiles, saying that Kid is special, and it would be hard to find anyone else like him within the Murim. People like him occasionally appear in the world, and are called pinnacle martial masters, who are considered the strongest in the world alongside the noble race and iron race. Maybe the iron race are dwarfs. She thinks about it, wondering if that kid is really that special. Ma Jin says yes, and he's definitely the future of the desolate fortress. He doesn't know how others who haven't seen him think, but the advice he gives shouldn't be underestimated and thought of as trivial. She asks if he's really telling her to discuss the heavenly demon's sacred arts with him. Ma Jin says yes, as there are limits to learning it alone, so he doesn't think he has enough time to help her. Right now, the correct thing to do would be to seek his help, because he possesses the qualities of a martial arts founder, as we see him training out in the training area. Ma Jin continues, saying that he can adapt any martial art to his body. She's surprised he's going that far, saying he has a quality like that. Ma Jin says if she feels bothered by it, it's probably just her, and that a small mission just appeared. He wants her to go as a team with him, and observe how he overcomes life and death situations to see if he truly is that special. He then says 5 years. He's the one that will become the next Radiant Squad captain. Sometime later, in one of the following days, we see horses riding down a road, as it's Chung Myung, Wan Chang, Mireio, and Yonshin. As Mireio is riding her horse, She recalls Ma Jin's words about seeing if he's actually worthy to be called her superior, as they head off towards a city. They make it to the stage station in Zhenping County, and they get off their horses. Wan Chang says his ass hurts because they rode that shit for 10 days. Yonshin looks over at Chung Myung, then over towards Myri Ao, and we get a flashback to them being debriefed about the mission. Ma Jin said recently people who bring offerings to the Blood Flame cult have settled down in a village and would routinely slaughter livestock while rooting crops. The village is located in Zhenping County in the south of Shanxi. Usually, the Shanxi branch would be able to deal with them, but there was an incident where the elixir of the Manhua sect was stolen. Wan Chang asks if the elixir is the plum blossom pill that's on par with the Shaolin Temple's Great Revitalization pill. Ma Jin says he suspects so, as the situation has escalated and now involves the whole of Shanxi. They don't have spare manpower and have asked the main Desolate Fortress branch for help, and he wants them all to go and deal with this. Yonshin recalls the Blood Flame cult attacking his family, and how the Tyrant Sword tried to wipe them out. We see some fat pig saying he was going to act respectfully towards the Desolate Fortress and the Sword of the Empire, but asks how they could be so slow. Yonshin wonders who this lardass is. As he and his assistant get closer to them, he says he can't believe they sent a team that's so young, asking if they can even defeat that man to begin with just the 4 of them. Yonshin asks what this creature is, which offends him. Chung Myung explains that there are always ignorant officials, and having visited numerous counties, he's seen many of them who have never even seen a true martial artist before. So there are people like him who think the Desolate Fortress is their broom. The catfish asks how they can be so disrespectful. Yonshin then says he should probably just hit his mute acupoint. Chung Myung says to do it and get it over with. Yonshin does exactly that, tapping on the side of his neck. I'm surprised his rolls didn't block the attack. And lardass loses his voice and looks worried. Yonshin says that he doesn't take orders from him. While the dude sits there just trying his best to undo it so he can speak, they walk away. Wan Chang asks if he learned to block acupoints. Yonshin says yes. Wan Chang has been contemplating it, but he thinks just calling him by his name doesn't feel respectful enough, and that he wants to call him Warrior Jung instead. Yonshin tells him to do as he wishes, calling him the Desolate Fortress Sacred Warrior. Bro is, of course, weak to praise and instantly raises his shoulders full of confidence. Somebody then puts their hand on Yonshin's shoulder, and it's none other than Chung Myung, saying surely he knows about how the Murim and government don't interfere with each other, and that neither one will invade the other. However, when it comes to the government, they get more freedom than the other martial artists because the imperial family allows it. It's fine even if they want to mess around with the idiots who think they have them on a leash. And that's the kind of group the Desolate Fortress is. Myri Ao says that being said, he should never overdo it, just like how he did now. Wan Chang looks over, spotting something, and says that village seems to have something going on. We see a dude in a field with something in his hand, and all the other villagers looking scared. Turns out he's holding a baby, and his sword is soaked in blood. He yells, telling everybody to be quiet while holding the little baby up. Yonshin immediately can tell what this is, as that is none other than a Blood Flame cultist. He immediately dashes off, looking hella pissed. When he looks over, he sees Chung Myung dashing past him. He says that he's fast, and recognizes it as the noble race's mobility art called Grass Flutter. It's not just him, as Myri Ao is also leaving him behind, as well as Wan Chang, which is genuinely surprising. Yonshin can't believe that he's actually the slowest in the group, but says that it actually makes a lot of sense, as he wasn't able to train much in mobility arts, and the lack of proper mobility arts experience from the Jung Manor is giving him a huge disadvantage, as all he can do is watch their backs. The cultist swings his blade, cutting somebody open as their blood flies through the air. The other villagers ask the dude if he's okay, while the cultist hits one ugly bastard face. The cultist then yells, telling him to hand the child over already, and tells the other dude who got cut to stay with them. The cultist says that perhaps because it's a child, that it's still full of life energy. He then hears footsteps and turns, only to see Chung Myung flying in with an attack. He manages to block it just in time, as sparks fly. We see it actually cut his blade a little bit. We see Chung Myung turn back and look at something, as he has now put himself in between the cultist and the villagers, as there's something else also in his hands. The cultist readies himself for another attack, but then realizes something, as he is empty-handed, as the baby is screaming, holding on to him. The cultist sees the desolate fortress text on his shoulder, and the fact that he's a blue robe, and begins to sweat nervously. He then sees Myri Ao running up as well, realizing he's not alone. He clicks his tongue while releasing a bunch of aura, which may be true chi, I'm not sure. We'll find out later, as they both watch, waiting to see what he does. The dude starts screaming, only to dash off the ground, flying overhead into some nearby trees. Now that he's very far away, they look up at him and are just confused, wondering what the hell that was, because they expected him to fight back, and they can't believe what they're watching, asking if this is real. Myri Ao says that looking at how fast he is, his mobility art probably sacrifices his own life in exchange for speed, which is what I thought happened too, and she says that the blood flame cultists are the worst. She then turns towards where they came from, seeing that Yonshin and Wanchang have finally caught up to them, and they are a little gassed out. Wanchang starts to take a breather, while Chung Myung comforts the mother. Later that night in the town, Myri Ao then calls out to Wanchang, saying that his overall martial arts skills are alright for a white robe, but his stamina is ass, and he needs to train to improve his stamina more from now on. Wanchang says yes, while putting his hands together. Then she says as for Yonshin, his basics are surprisingly well trained, to the extent it's rare to find someone like him even amongst the 9 great sects and 8 great clans, and she noticed it when she saw how he ran without using any techniques, just from his physical abilities alone, that there's probably no one in the Radiant Demon Squad who can hold a candle to him, and a frail and thin member of a noble race like Chung Myung can never be his match in terms of physical abilities. Chung Myung says that's right, and he does nothing but be disappointed about not knowing any mobility arts, while laughing and smiling, as we see him thinking about something. Then he looks over, as Yonshin doesn't look happy with himself. He calls out to him, asking if he would like to learn his mobility arts. Yonshin, surprised by this, asks exactly what he means. Chung Myung says that he might be confused, and while he did say he could teach him his mobility arts, he can't teach him the one of his household, and he can teach him the one that the noble races use. Normally, people wouldn't be able to do it even if they know how it works, and he just happens to believe Yonshin can get it down. Yonshin is confused, asking if he's really going to be able to move like the noble races. Chung Myung says there's no need to be too happy, as no one in the Radiant Demon Squad so far has been able to learn it. Wanchang asks what he's talking about, so Myri Ao says that he already taught those in the Radiant Demon Squad who wanted to learn it, but nobody succeeded. Chung Myung continues, saying that this is what he calls mobility art, as his feet begin glowing with a bright yellow glow. They're surprised. He continues to explain that it doesn't rely on anything physical. Yonshin is just laser focused on the energy at the tip of his feet, saying there were no sudden movements in his core energy. Chung Myung goes back to explaining that this is just how they walk and run, as he starts to lightly move his way up the nearby tree. Yonshin pays attention to his feet, noticing that he's also not having to take any extra breaths, and says that his footsteps are really light. As Chung Myung lands atop the tree, Yonshin says that he couldn't sense his presence either, and that this might actually be really worth learning. Chung Myung takes one of his feet off the branches, as he starts to lightly drop down. Yonshin says even when descending, it's as if he's a leaf that's falling from a tree, as he lightly lands on the ground. Chung Myung asks if he understands. Yonshin says that he's thinking about what he can do to use core energy to create wind, since he doesn't have the authority like the noble races. Chung Myung looks genuinely surprised, asking if he was able to tell that it's the energy of nature just by watching it once. Yonshin says that's why he thought he showed it to him. They all kind of stare at him, because he doesn't realize how weird he is to them. Yonshin says that, thanks to him, he has a few ideas. If he stops his movement like a technique, then divides his core energy and uses it, he might be able to do it. Chung Myung is still just surprised, but Myri Ao understands now why Ma Jin wanted her to talk to him about her martial arts. Wanchang says that he thinks this is going to take a while, so he's going to go get them somewhere to stay. Later that night, we see Yonshin locked in, trying to think about how to recreate the energy of nature that Chung Myung demonstrated. We see light blue particles releasing from his hand. As he opens his eyes, they also have that light blue color to them. Bro might have cooked it up. Outside, Chung Myung is sleeping in a hammock, only to hear the door open, and turn to see Yonshin coming out. Yonshin walks up underneath the tree and stands out in the courtyard for a second, looking straight down at his feet. As we see that same glow now being transferred to it, He has a circle around his feet just as Chung Myung did, which surprises him, and he says, "Holy shit," because bro actually did it, as he lightly strolls across the ground using the energy of nature. It jumps to some birds eating a worm, showing the metaphor about the early bird. Wanchang sighs, as we see Myri Ao watching. Wanchang says it's hard to believe that Yeonshin has only been here for a month, yet has learned the noble race's mobility art. Chung Myung says that nobody can deny the fact that he has the qualities of a martial arts founder. Even Ma Jin chose his own mobility arts. Myri Ao recognizes those words, as Ma Jin said the same thing about how she can see it for herself. Wanchang asks her if it's really alright to send Yeonshin in alone. She says yes, and they are people who got scared and stayed inside for a month. Besides, it's only a scouting mission, so Yeonshin alone should be sufficient. As we see him running through the forest, he says that he feels much lighter on his feet now. The amount of speed and effort he can put in now is way more than before. He begins to smile at his progress and continues to run, while saying this shit is gas. He finally makes it to scout the cultist's base, as we see him hiding behind some bushes. He says he found their hideout, so now he should go back and tell the rest. He then hears a weird sound, and turns to see the cultist raising a child to his face. Yeonshin wonders what is going on, only to see the man take a mick chunk out of the kid's throat. Yeonshin knows it isn't the right call, but we hear his footsteps approaching the man eating his snack. He looks up after hearing them, curious, only to spot Yeonshin standing before him. He puts the kid on the floor, asking him who he is, but recognizes his outfit as one from the desolate fortress. Yeonshin doesn't reply, and only stares at the man, who laughs while wiping the blood away from his mouth. He approaches him too, asking if he really came alone. He laughs, calling him an idiot, saying he came here despite being only a white robe, and that he should blame his own bad luck. But bro got ahead of himself, as Yeonshin swings his blade forward. Before the man can realize what happened, his head is floating through the air. His body hits the ground first, spewing blood out like a fountain. Yeonshin turns towards the kid, and sees he has tears in his eyes, and looks regretful, as he recalls his family's massacre from the blood-flame cultists. His sword begins to glow with a blue aura, and he says none of them should be allowed to breathe the same air as him anymore. He tells the child to wait, as he will bury him once he kills the rest of them. He stands before the house, charging up his aura, as we see it swirling around his hands. As he begins to see lines forming on the house, as it's what Ma Jin demonstrated before. He locks in, using the radiant demon arts, swift sword style. He swings his blade forward, absolutely destroying the house with it. One of the cultists inside is ripped in half, while the other is processing what just happened. Yeonshin leaps forward, using their curtains as cover. We see his blade raised, as he thrusts forward, piercing the cultist in the chest. Bro on the floor did not even see what happened. Yeonshin asks the man while his sword is still in his chest, if he believes the weak are their prey. And if that is the case, then it must feel awful to be killed by someone stronger. As his body goes limp on the floor, Yeonshin swings his blade, clearing the blood off of it. He then notices something, as he looks up, spotting a giant cave that was behind the cave. And he can sense a lot of energy from the inside. He thinks it might mean that this isn't the hideout of a few cultists, but rather it might be an actual branch instead. He hears footsteps, as we see a group walking out. They hit him with the typical third-rate villain lines, and say that he'll pay for this with his blood. We even see the ugly dude from the field before, that used true chi to escape. Yeonshin recognizes him too. They begin charging at him again with the third-rate villain lines. Yeonshin pushes off the ground, dashing into their group, which surprises them, and he looks pissed that they haven't been dealt with sooner. He swings his blade up, as if he was dancing, leaving blue lines along their bodies. They don't know it, but they are already dead.
Money!
The delay finally ends with some of their heads being sent flying, while others are cut in half. Yeonshin looks up amidst the bloodbath, staring directly down the tunnel, wondering who is next. He hears a voice inside, asking why a white robe is causing such a mess. Yeonshin starts to sense more energy coming from the cave. But now he understands what he was feeling before wasn't from the group he killed, as it is now growing closer and closer. Someone begins to step out of the cave. Yeonshin actually looks a bit anxious, since he can tell they are on a completely different level compared to those he fought so far. As the dude glares down at him, Yeonshin says that he heard when a part of one's body returned to what it used to be, it means they can refine their core energy. He's talking about the black color of his hair. He grits his teeth, saying he must be in charge of this place. The man goes to unsheath this blade. As Yonshin continues, he says that they are called Bloodmaster swordsmen. The dude then says he'll use his pain to strengthen his blood. Yonshin says bro got enough edge with it, he's gonna cut himself. We learn more about the Bloodmaster swordsman. It's a title for each branch leader. To the normal person, they are like gods. There aren't many martial masters who have the skill to kill them. They continue their WWE stare down, with the cultist staring down at him, and Yonshin back up towards his ugly ass. He begins to imbue his aura into his blade. As Yonshin says he needs to go all out before he even gets close. He exhales, and explains how before he was only able to win because he launched a barrage of attacks, before his opponent could respond. As he plans to do the same thing again this time. The Golem lookalike says that the name of the desolate fortress has made him too arrogant. Yonshin swings his blade using the limit releasing technique, as we see him gritting his teeth. The attack comes out, as Golem blocks it. But he is surprised, as it has already chipped his blade. Yonshin takes a step backwards, readying himself, and using the technique he learned from Chung Myung. He dashes in fast, closing the gap between them. He grits his teeth for the next attack. He is going so fast we see after images, almost like they were shadow clones. Each one attacking in a different direction. The attacks give Golem no time to breathe, as he is on the defensive. Then he opens his ugly ass mouth, saying that isn't too bad. He even begins laughing. Yonshin swings again towards him, confused by what he means. He starts to recall his family once more, and how the Blood Flame cult is responsible for it all, while he was powerless. He starts to grind his teeth out of frustration. He swings in once more, causing Golem to look surprised as he blocks it. Yonshin says he is no longer the old him. He stretches his hand forward, grabbing only Golem's hand, which surprises him. He then twists it, causing him to scream in pain. Since he folded that shit like a pretzel. The cultist gets pissed, and starts to imbue his hand with aura. And comes for a hit directly on Yonshin's face. But he gets his arm cut off in the process. Golem looks down at it and screams. Yonshin raises his blade for a thrust, while running, and he stabs him straight through the chest. The tense air starts to dissipate, as Golem spits up blood. Yonshin twists the blade inside of him, as his blood splats onto his face. Golem is in denial that he lost to a white robe. Yonshin says he must be used to being on the other end of this. He starts to slowly pull the blade out, causing Golem's blood to pour out of him. The blade is now fully out. Bro is legit painting the floor. He drops to his knees, as his body goes limp. Yonshin starts panting rapidly, glad he is out of that situation. And even lets out a sigh of relief, or maybe even accomplishment, since he just saved the nearby villages. He glances over to his side, spotting a giant hole in the ground. He walks over to it, only to spot the corpses of the villagers. Even women and children are inside of it. He looks at one of the children who died full of fear, and some older dude. He looks at them with eyes, mixed with regret and hope. Saying that he hopes they all rest better now, and go to paradise. That night back at the inn, we see Wan Chang and Myri Ao both surprised, but Chung Myung seems to be curious. As Yonshin arrives, soaked in blood, and carrying the boy who is getting his throat eaten. When he looks up at them he looks tired. Wan Chang calls out to him, worried. He tells Wan Chang to help with the kid. Wan Chang is just surprised that he isn't dead. Myri Ao asks if he fought, and what happened, asking if he's alright. He looks down at all of the blood, saying he's fine as it isn't his. The place he discovered turned out to be a Blood Flame cult branch. She sighs, saying that she is glad he is safe. Then starts to have a stroke, because she realized what he just said. She yells asking if he's serious. Yonshin says that there were 8 red-haired cultists total. He also tells them he killed the one from the other night, one with both red and black hair. Myri Ao looks surprised. Chung Myung low-key does too. Myri Ao says that, if his hair was black and red it means he must have been a Bloodmaster swordsman, which confirms it was a branch. She says she can't believe there is a Blood Flame cult branch that has planted its roots here. Chung Myung grabs his blade off the table, and starts to put it at his hip. He says no matter what the mission is, they need to be destroyed, and they will raid their branch. He tells Yonshin he's accomplished a great feat, now he should rest. Myri Ao says she'll go with him to clean it up. Yonshin says there's no need for them to go, and they can just send the government troops instead. But they both looked pissed. Yonshin says they need them to help the victims. Myri Ao turns, wondering what he means. Even Wan Chang starts to think about it, wondering if it means what he thinks. Myri Ao decides to ask if he defeated all of them. Chung Myung starts to sweat. Yeonshin says yes, and that he killed all of them. They both looks genuinely shocked. Chung Myung asks if he really destroyed a whole branch solo. Yeonshin says yes. The mobility art helped him a ton. Myri Ao and Chung Myung both kind of look at each other in disbelief. Myri Ao says that the Bloodmaster swordsmen have strange regeneration abilities. Asking if it wasn't dangerous. Yeonshin asks her what she means. She continues, saying that some people drove them to the brink of death then got stabbed in their backs because they didn't know about the regeneration ability. He says he has no idea about the regen abilities, as we see him lifting his hand, while holding onto Golem's hair. Raising his head onto the table, did bro pull that out of an inventory? Both Myri Ao and Chung Myung look at it, asking why the hell he'd put that thing on the table. But he just thinks to himself that it could have been bad. Chung Myung sighs, realizing that he might be the GOAT, saying the abilities exist, but turns out it didn't matter. It jumps to the desolate fortress, and Ma Jin says that he didn't expect a Bloodmaster swordsman to be involved, as it was meant to be a simple mission. But this might be better, as they were able to see what the white robes were capable of. He asks them both how the lightning genius was like when faced with a life or death situation. Myri Ao thinks to herself it probably wasn't that close. Chung Myung also looks confused about it, asking what he means. Ma Jin says that, if it was branch level then it would be dangerous to a white robe, saying surely they didn't destroy the branch out of worry for the white robes. Myri Ao says that isn't what happened. As neither of them actually saw anything. He went on a reconnaissance mission alone, then annihilated the entire Blood Flame cult branch solo. Ma Jin is confused, asking if he really soloed their entire branch, while sweating bullets. They both tell him yes awkwardly. Bro has no idea what he's going to tell the higher-ups. It jumps to Yeonshin staring out of his window, and Wan Chang begins to laugh, saying he can't believe he's attached to this place, he's glad to be back. And he asks if he also feels the electric atmosphere ever since they returned. Yeonshin thinks about it, saying it felt like they were having a festival. Wan Chang says that is not what he meant. I heard it's because the former Divine Squad captain has returned. It's all to fight for the position of Elder Council leader. Yeonshin understands what this means. Wan Chang continues, saying that he brought a boy with him who is the adopted son of the famed Desolate Ma clan, and is extremely talented. Yeonshin says that it is his mother's clan, but they've never come to Xinye County before, not even during his mother's wedding, even after she gave birth. They not once visited. He chuckles, saying it's something you'd hear in a village. It's as if they cut all ties to her. Because she married someone that would make them seem like a lower class. It jumps to Yeonshin and Ma Jin, as he is asking if he was summoned. Ma Jin looks up at him, and says it's amazing, as his energy is different yet again, as we see a green and blue hue from him. He says the fact he annihilated the branch solo was not by luck either. Yeonshin wonders why he is just staring at him. Ma Jin puts his hand on his table, standing up, saying it is time to go. As the fortress master asks for them to meet together. Yeonshin wonders why the fortress master wants to meet him so suddenly. As Ma Jin starts to walk out, Yeonshin follows, asking if there have been other instances, when she'd asked to meet white robe warriors after their enlistment meeting. Ma Jin says not once. Yeonshin realizes it must be pretty important then, as he's exiting the building, the blue robe turns, and some even pay their respects to him and Ma Jin. As they recognize him as the lightning genius. And how he has killed a Bloodmaster swordsman, but they say it is pretty hard to believe, as he looks really young too. They continue walking. Ma Jin tells him this is only a natural reaction. If he is able to destroy a branch by himself, it means he is now a martial master of the desolate fortress. We see the master's pavilion in front of them. Yeonshin starts to walk with more confidence, saying yes sir. His concept of time is different from this, as it isn't a luxury he has. If he wants to live, he needs to become as strong as a divine sword captain before he turns 20, and he has to easily fly through the blue rank, even the black rank like Ma Jin. He needs to become capable of leading 17 squads, like the Radiant Demon squads, as a purple rank. They finally make it in front of her door, and we hear her telling someone she thought he only had one grandchild. He replies, saying the blood of a lowly place can't flow far. And he'll just be glad if he doesn't bring shame to the Ma clan. The child he is with now is the Ma successor, while isn't from the main family, he is exceptionally talented. Ma Jin finally decides to open the door, and looks annoyed, as he takes the lead with Yeonshin behind him. As they make it right in front of his grandpa and the leader of the fortress. She looks up warmly towards Yeonshin, and even gives a soft smile. Just like last time, Yeonshin looks stunned by her beauty. He spots Ma Jin greeting her, so he does the exact same thing. Yeonshin looks up towards his grandpa, but doesn't even call him it, just says he is the former Divine Sword Squad captain. And he is a purple robe, much stronger than Ma Jin. He turns his feet toward Yeonshin, saying he must be the lightning genius, and introduces himself as Ma Yeon-yeok. He says he used to lead the Divine Sword Squad, and he told the Fortress Master that his grandson would like to see a martial master that is his peer. Saying it's nice to meet him, Yeonshin says it means he doesn't know who he is. Not sure what he is feeling right now, but the Fortress Master still smiles at him. Yeon-yeok says he heard about him recently. And he can see the aura coming from Yeonshin. Yeonshin looks at him in the eyes. As Yeon-yeok tells him the rumors do not do him justice. Yeon-yeok says he is very accomplished. It's hard to believe that he's attained so much at a young age. Yeonshin puts his hands together in a respectful way. And greets him, calling him grandfather, and introduces himself. Yeon-yeok asks what he means by grandfather. Even Ma Jin looks confused, as does his cousin. But the fortress leader is smiling still. They ask him again what he's talking about. Yeon-yeok then looks surprised and recalls his surname as Yeong. Yeonshin still looking into his eyes, Yeon-yeok asks him if he is maybe his daughter's son. Yeonshin says it's nice to meet him. Ma Jin just looks baffled, and starts to sweat nervously, asking if he's his sister's son. Turns out he looked annoyed earlier for a different reason, but who saw this coming? Yeonshin also looks confused, and now there is just awkward silence in the room. Yeonshin didn't expect Ma Jin to be his uncle. He apologizes, saying he's not sure of the relations on his mother's side. Even those who were in his father's clan, which has been destroyed, gave up on him. Both Ma Jin and Yeon-yeok look surprised to hear that the Yeong clan has been destroyed, asking if he really meant what he just said. Yeonshin says based on their reactions, it seems they didn't know the Yeong manor had fallen. Yeon-yeok says oh shit, then asks the fortress master if he is allowed to speak with him alone. He looks over at her. She looks amused. Yeonshin steps up, saying that his mother isn't a member of his clan, so he doesn't belong there. As a warrior of the desolate fortress, he respects his accomplishments here, but he's not comfortable talking to him about any personal matters. Yeon-yeok realizes he can't push on this topic, and the fortress calls out to Yeonshin, telling him that she likes his spirit. Yeonshin nods his head toward her, and his cousin starts yelling, saying that he won't acknowledge this. And that someone like Yeonshin isn't his grandfather's direct descendant. Yeonshin looks up at the boy, who continues yapping, asking how he could show such disrespect to the former Divine Sword Squad captain. Yeonshin says the kid has forgotten he is in the presence of the desolate fortress master herself. He tells him straight up, he has no need for his acknowledgement. Besides, he's not from the desolate fortress's Ma clan, he is the Radiant Demon Squad's lightning genius. Yeonshin even smirks at him, which causes the kid to get pissed. And he begs his grandfather to allow for them to have a duel, as he will prove he's not worthy of being his blood relative. Yeonshin says there's no need for him to agree though. But he isn't fully opposed to it. So if he changes it to an exchange for learning, he'll agree to it. However, he has no need to prove his value to their clan. Yeon-yeok again realizes he is right, but is trying to cook up something. While his cousin is still pissed, Yeonshin spots gauntlets on his waist. He guesses he's learned the palm strikes of the Ma clan. The fortress master says that's enough yapping, as Yeon-yeok is an old-time friend who journeyed with her for a long time. And the lighting genius is a promising subordinate. Any conflicts between the two will put her in a tough spot, so she prefers it to be settled as martial artists, and they can bet what they want from one another. Yeonshin is surprised by this, and thinks about it. As she says she knows this is of no benefit to him, as a friend of Yeon-yeok she will grant him one request, regardless of the duel's outcome. Yeonshin asks if she can give him what they discussed before, the fruit of the world tree. She tells him that isn't possible at the moment. It would be the same even if Yeon-yeok was the one making the request, because he already received a different reward for his contribution as the Divine Sword Squad captain. Although she could teach him one of her vital energy techniques, Yeonshin is surprised, but so is everyone else that she is willing to teach him martial arts, as she is the strongest in the entire world. Yeonshin looks at his cousin, who is super excited as it means he can request to learn from her too. Yeonshin says it's very obvious what he would be doing. Yeonshin clenches his fist, telling her that he will do it. It jumps to outside, as they are standing across from one another. The fortress master says they have the whole place to themselves, so they can do whatever they want. Yeonshin looks forward, staring at his gauntlets. As he is cracking his knuckles, getting ready. Then he looks back over towards Ma Jin and Yeon Yeok, saying that the Radiant Demon Squad is good enough for him right now, so he doesn't need the Ma clan. He exhales deeply, and stretches his hand out, gesturing that his cousin begin already. Which pisses him off, as he charges in, rearing his fist back. Yeonshin deflects the attack easily and gets behind him. He then turns backward, saying that he must have consumed some really good elixirs as he has more energy than him. His cousin starts rearing his fist back again. Yeonshin begins to use his limit releasing technique. His cousin comes in with a right, Yeonshin sidesteps, he then follows up with a diagonal left, again avoided, then a downward right. Even though the attack was avoided, it still sends out explosive chi. Yeonshin has not been hurt by a single attack yet. Frustrated, his cousin starts to go for a back fist while charging it up. He yells, asking why he isn't unsheathing his blade. Yeonshin avoids the attack, but it still makes a whip-like sound in the air. Yeonshin tells him it is because his fist strike techniques are actually pretty good. Of course his cousin thinks he is mocking him. He then begins to imbue aura into his legs this time. He dashes forward, coming in with a way stronger attack than before. As the punch goes forward, Yeonshin raises his hand. To block the attack, it makes a loud sound, emitting shockwaves. As we see Yeonshin still uninjured, and has distanced himself. There is even a light blue aura around him. He lightly taps the ground. I believe he was using Chung Myung's movement technique. His cousin just looks confused, he has a mix of anger in there too. Yeon Yeok looks surprised, but Ma Jin knows this is normal. The fortress master looks pleased too. Yeonshin though is lost in thought. Saying he has thought of a strong fist technique, he starts to raise his hands. Saying when his count reaches 10, this will end. His cousin, pissed, thinks he is toying with him. Yeon Yeok says 10 moves is still an understatement. Ma Jin says that is not what he meant. The fortress master still looks pleased. As Ma Jin explains he only meant 10 seconds, as he is creating a new martial art. Yeonshin then notices something. His cousin also thinks it's 10 moves, saying that he will give it his all. While now the aura is brighter than before, and begins to envelop both of his arms. He tells him it is called the fusion fist strike. Yeonshin says this is good. Instead of getting all riled up, he calmed down instead, and from the waves of core energy he is feeling, he can see that he was not taught in a shitty way. Yeonshin says even though he is using a fist strike, he can use a palm one if he wishes instead. He doesn't need his advice, and would prefer he just did his best, as he will be able to show him plenty of things. He starts to get pissed, and dashes forward ready to end this. As he's coming in for a big strike. Yeonshin rears his hand back too, and pivots his foot. Using the energy accumulation discharge, hitting their fists together. His cousin wonders what's the deal with his strength. Yeonshin then readies his foot, leaping forward straight into his cousin, as more energy is building up. Ma Jin is surprised he's not losing energy instead, and Yeonshin now is about to use the second strike with the accumulated energy. His cousin puts his guard up, only for it to be blown wide open. And Yeonshin stands there proud his attack worked. Ma Jin says that he must have gotten inspiration for that attack, from the fusion fist strike. His cousin also realizes now he has become even stronger. He looks worryingly over towards his grandpa. And grits his teeth, realizing he can't let him down. As he starts to imbue even more energy into his attack. Yeonshin says that's good, and he wants him to show him more. He says that he knows he has more. His cousin yells telling him he is too arrogant. As he starts rapidly attacking towards him, Yeonshin pivots his feet, while returning with his own using the third strike of the accumulated energy. Yeonshin hits his cousin's hand away, causing it to fly backwards. He grunts and Yeonshin realizes it's his chance to end it. He starts to imbue aura into his hand, saying that palm strikes are interesting. He even begins to smirk. The rest watch intently. Yeonshin's strike starts to come in, and his cousin can't believe he is going to lose to him. Yeonshin names this technique the fourth strike of the accumulated energy. Yeon Yeok looks surprised, but the fortress leader closes her eyes, expecting this. His cousin drops to his knees, and begins to cough while holding onto his stomach. He looks up towards Yeonshin, seeing a blue circle on his head. Yeonshin's eyes actually look at him quite warmly. His cousin sweats nervously, the rest continue watching. Saying that a fist art that gets stronger as the fight gets longer, is pretty hard to believe, and he truly has created a new martial art in that short time. Yeonshin exhales, and opens his eyes again. Looking down at his hands, He says that he has finally created a martial art that can be called a famed ultimate technique. The fortress master tells him that was a really good fight, and she didn't expect to witness someone create a martial art. Yeonshin says he's embarrassed, and hopes he didn't waste her time. She says he is being too humble, asking if he's decided on the new name of the technique. He tells her it's called the Infinite Blossom Fist Strike. She seems amused by the name of it, to the point she tells him it is quite the perfect name. Ma Jin also congratulates him, saying he's created an incredible martial art. He says he's only managed to work out its framework, he's yet to be satisfied with the moves inside of it. Additionally, with the palm strikes it makes him rely on the radiant demon arts. Ma Jin says even with that, there's not going to be many if any white robes who can take that attack. He always tries not to be surprised, but he can't help it when he's growing at such a rapid rate. Yeonshin though, isn't happy with it. Saying that it's not fast enough yet, silence takes over the group again. As Yeon Yeok speaks up now, he asks what he can do to gain forgiveness. Ma Jin is surprised, so is his cousin. Yeonshin is just caught off guard by this. A purple robe master of the desolate fortress, is powerful and people think of them as gods who can take the life energy of anyone they wish. Yet someone so powerful, is now lowering himself to him. Yeonshin looks unsure how to feel about the situation, and thinks about it before telling his grandpa, that this situation is making him feel very uncomfortable, which is a shock to Yeon Yeok. Yeonshin says they can't turn back time, and members of his mother's clan are strangers to him. He is now part of the Radiant Demon Squad family. Yeon Yeok tells him they just need to build a relationship now. Yeonshin tells him he barely has enough time to develop his martial arts. Yeon Yeok wonders why he is so strapped for time. Yeonshin continues, saying that he won against his grandson, so please respect that as a martial artist. The fortress master says that since he won, it's time to settle for a reward. She will teach him a martial art of any type, when he wishes. And he can make one request to the Ma clan. Yeonshin seems satisfied with this, saying that he'll inform them of that through his squad leader when he is ready. Ma Jin wonders why he gotta do grunt work. As they start heading back, Ma Jin calls out to him, saying he has a mission that'll be helpful to him. Yeonshin wonders what it is. Then it jumps to Shen, a city full of people. As we see Wanchang, Ma Jin and Yeonshin, never mind the whole gang has pulled up on this one. Turns out it's for the plum blossom pill. Ma Jin says he will want it, as it is an elixir of the Manhwa sect, that is considered a treasure in the Murin. The Manhwa sect has lost it, so numerous martial artists and sects have started to look for it. Yeonshin says it must be crazy out there. Ma Jin says it is, and they will accompany Manhwa to search for it. But it's mostly just a cover to reduce the number of casualties during the search. Yeonshin says in a conflict this big, he will be able to use his sword in real fights. Ma Jin says that's right, it is definitely a mission that will help him. It'll be a good opportunity for him to face off against all sorts of famed martial artists. For someone like Yeonshin, the amount he would learn by fighting is incomparably more than if he just trained. Wanchang says it's such a pity. He can't believe they aren't able to wear their uniforms because they can't reveal that the desolate fortress is helping the Manhwa sect. Ma Jin smirks, then some Manhwa soldiers walk out of a building. He looks over, staring at Ma Jin and says they must be from the desolate fortress, and they've been waiting for him. Yeonshin is probably excited to learn some martial arts. The man says Ma Jin's full title. Ma Jin greets him as the sage Chunyo. Yeonshin explains how Chunyo is the leader of the Plum Blossom Swordsmen, and one of the top martial masters. He glances over towards Yeonshin and the rest. But he is also the reason that Ma Jin had to come onto this mission. When looking at him he gets the same feeling as when he first met Ma Jin. Pepe says he recognizes Myri Ao and Chung Myung. So there is no need for introductions as they fought together already. Yeonshin wonders why Chung Myung's nickname to him is called the Demonic Swordsman, and Myri Ao the Wave Swordsman. Yeonshin looks towards all of the disciples, specifically one of them who is yawning. His vision gets blocked off by Chunyo and he says that he understands the kind of mindset the desolate fortress has towards the matter now, as he even had to mobilize his disciple. Yeonshin says he must be misunderstanding it, because he isn't wearing his white robe. Ma Jin goes to explain it, but Chunyo raises his blade, cutting him off, saying that he can tell he is pretty extraordinary. He would like him to have a friendly duel with the disciple of their sect leader. Ma Jin takes it as he wants to show that he is above them. He smiles since he is confident. But since they are going to be moving as a party, it would be awkward if core members began fighting. So they want to use the future generations of their groups to determine hierarchy. He looks back at Yeonshin, who reaches for his blade, showing he wants to do it. Ma Jin smirks, then the sect leader's disciple says he is making him do extra work again. Also, he will only need 5 moves. Chunyo says he will learn something here, so to give it his all. He says that he isn't sure what there is to learn here. But he heard the radiant demon arts is based on senses. Yeonshin steps out, wondering how deep the martial arts of the Manhwa sect can really be. For him to act this way, Yeonshin asks if he really thinks he needs 5 moves. The guy is surprised, asking him if that offended him. He says that he wasn't trying to underestimate him. He had a really tough training today, so he was just thinking aloud. And he introduces himself as Yu Yun, of the Manhwa sect obviously. Yeonshin starts to gauge him now. But Wan Chang recognizes him as the Sword Dragon, and the best disciple of the sect. Even Myri Ao knows him, saying he is the future of the Manhwa sect. There are even rumors he has been learning the Violet Dawn sacred art. Wan Chang starts to get a bit nervous about it. Yeonshin starts to take his bag off. Can't tell if Yu Yun looks bored already, or if this is meant to be amusement. Yeonshin starts rubbing his wrists. And introduces himself with just his name, no title. Yu Yun smiles, then locks in. Using an ability called Invisible Wind Stride. Dashing forward instantly, multiple different attacks begins to fly out towards Yeonshin. He asks if this is the Falling Blossoms Palm Strike, and that it contains a wide variety of moves. Yu Yun smirks, looking confident. Yeonshin starts to raise his hands, as he is using the first strike of his new technique, the Infinite Blossom. Called Vortex, as he sends out his own attacks, surprising Yu Yun as he almost gets a fresh haircut. Yeonshin now starts to close the gap, while Yu Yun is just confused. But Yeonshin looks content that his martial art works. He stomps the floor. This is the second strike, called Formidable Wall. He raises his fist behind the aura wall, striking multiple times towards Yu Yun. And now he will use the attack he just saw from Yu Yun as inspiration for his third strike. He tells him he wants to play a little longer, and he wanted to end this in around 10 moves. Yeonshin stomps forward once more. This time rearing his fist back, Chunyo looks surprised. But Ma Jin expected as much. Yeonshin's attack begins to send out plum blossom petals. They slowly begin to shift, and zap out as Yeonshin has transformed them into something, which I believe is meant to be a flower beginning to blossom. As it blooms, the petals begin to fly out, hitting Yu Yun all over. Which causes him to spit up, as he falls to the floor backward. Chunyo and the rest look surprised. Yeonshin lowers his hands, saying that he will use that last attack as his third strike. It will be named the Flower Strike. He looks down proudly at his hand, then glances over. As everyone is surprised by this, they wonder what just happened, since the most talented disciple of the Manhwa sect lost in 3 moves. They wonder who the hell Yeonshin is now. Chunyo tells one of his men to go get him. As he walks forward, he picks up Yu Yun off the floor. Chunyo says that it looks like the desolate fortress has been raising a dragon. Which makes him wonder if they want to control all of Murin. Ma Jin smirks, saying that is an exaggeration. As the desolate fortress won't do anything if no harm comes to the people of the country. Chunyo says he's just giving excuses that sound genuine. He calls out to Yeonshin, telling him that it was a great performance. While it seems similar to the Falling Blossoms Palm Strike. He doubts he has learned any of their sect's martial arts before. He never thought there'd be another martial art similar to it. It also provided enough motivation for Yu Yun, who has gotten lazy in his training. And if something causes him to leave the desolate fortress, the Manhwa will be more than glad to welcome him. The others are surprised he's trying to poach him. Ma Jin tells him that he crossed a line there. Chunyo puts his hand up, saying he admits that he got ahead of himself. And he is sorry about that. But it couldn't be helped since there is such a brilliant talent here. Myri Ao starts using sound transmission to call out to Yeonshin. While Ma Jin is still pissed, low-key so is Wan Chang. She says it looks like he's having a hard time standing, and we see she looks worried. He smiles, since it isn't a bad feeling. Saying that with that last move, he used up all of his core energy. The Infinite Blossom Fist Strike uses burst discharge in all of its stances. Which also consumes that much inner energy. So he still has to use a sword when fighting for real. It jumps to an end. As Chung Myung tells him that he needs to open up his center energy core quickly. If he doesn't have enough inner energy, he will need to make up for it with stamina. Yeonshin asks what he means by his center energy core. Myri Ao says that it seems as if he didn't know the function of the center energy core. She says that it possesses an efficacy that even the upper dantian, which is said to house the divine in the mind, cannot bestow. Got her speaking in riddles before GTA 6. She says it'll help him have more robust inner energy. He asks what exactly that entails. Myri Ao explains that it just means there is a higher efficacy. Surely he's heard of martial masters, who don't get tired even after fighting for 7 days and nights. He says yes. She says that is only possible because they train their center energy core. It stabilizes the flow of core energy and allows them to use energy draining skills multiple times. Even if they are hit by a powerful attack, their energy flow will not get disrupted most of the time. Yeonshin thinks that would be good to learn. She says that is also the reason Chung Myung was able to fight against the Namgoong's strongest swordsman. Yeonshin wonders how to do it, so he asks how he can open his center energy core. She says it'll naturally open as he trains his lower energy core for a while, and it would be good to circulate energy revolving around his upper body. He asks if there is no faster way, and even calls her senior. She looks caught off guard by this, but looks super happy that he called her senior. Though he just wonders what's with her facial expression. It jumps to Myri Ao yelling, asking if they mean the battle maniac. The customers look worried, but Wan Chang is just confused. Ma Jin says yes, he is the culprit. He then explains how he is a notorious thief, based north of the Yangtze River. He is ALS the one who stole Ma Jin's martial arts manual, so this worked out great. Wan Chang asks what he is talking about. Myri Ao looks annoyed, saying they had a little situation. Ma Jin says starting from now, they'll be destroying all of the unorthodox faction signboards within Shanxi, with any connection to the battle maniac. Wan Chang asks what the Manhua sect should be doing in the meantime. Ma Jin says while they draw their attention, the Manhua sect will infiltrate and check their locations. Yeonshin asks if they have any justification to destroy their signboards. Chung Myung says it seems he doesn't know much about unorthodox martial artists. Not only does the empire not recognize them, they are even collecting taxes in their territory. The empire determines whether a group is orthodox or unorthodox using a simple method. It's based on if they are stealing money, or if they are given money willingly. Ma Jin says they are the filth of their country. The only reason they've left them alone till now is because they know that a new group will appear, even if they took them out. But there is no justification for attacking people like them. Yeonshin asks how many they'll be attacking. Ma Jin says they'll attack 6, and he will handle 2 himself. Yeonshin asks if he can take 1 solo too. Ma Jin says that is very dangerous, asking if it's because he wants the credits for himself. Yeonshin says this is gonna be light work. Ma Jin says that taking a whole organization solo is different. When fighting against a group there are too many variables to consider. It can't even be compared to a normal fight. Yeonshin says it is still something he needs to experience as well. Ma Jin realizes he can't argue against him, so says that he will assign the mission. And he will target the Mantis sect that's in Shen, Lianhu. He warns him they are truly evil, they kidnap both women and children. His current mission is to wipe them all out alone. It jumps to him in the woods, with a man behind him, who is staring at him curiously. He says he can't believe he is going alone, asking if he would like to reconsider, as the Mantis sect is to not be taken lightly. There are more than 10 of them who are very experienced martial artists. The lowest ranked member could easily defeat a whole alley of thugs. Yeonshin asks for more info on the Mantis sect. The man tells him that 3 years ago, they took over the streets of Lianhu, and dragged a dozen women to be forced as maids. Although they are vicious, it seems that they have skillfully manipulated the local magistrate. Yeonshin asks if anyone has actually seen them use martial arts. The man says they use a variety of weapons. He saw them a few times from afar. They had curved swords, spears and more. They were so fast that it was hard to tell what was happening. Yeonshin says while they haven't developed a meridian it seems they did learn martial arts. Yeonshin asks how many people were captured, also wondering why the government hasn't done anything. The man says that since the local magistrate is working with the Mantis sect, he makes sure they have no issues. Yeonshin knows where he must start then. It jumps to Lianhu County. We see people looking nervous, as we see women tied up with a group of thugs harassing them. They keep laughing, and even smelling the women. Yeonshin doesn't look happy. He says no wonder the desolate fortress had to come. Yeonshin asks if they are government troops, and if those tied up are criminals. One of the men smirks, then throws his knife towards him. Yeonshin snatches it out of the air. He then starts to throw it back, using the radiant demon art, swift sword style, hitting the dude straight in the forehead. The others look surprised, asking who he learned martial arts from. And the way he holds the dagger is weird, asking if he even knows to use it properly. Yeonshin doesn't fall for their rage baiting. One of them unsheathes his blade, saying he was pretty fast, asking what the martial art was called. Yeonshin also unsheathes his, saying there is no need to name such trivial things. The dude then gets excited, saying that if he gives that sword to the sect leader, but before he can finish his sentence, he gets his face cut in half. Bro just got split like a piece of firewood. The rest look surprised by this, but Yeonshin turns to his side. Using the same sword style, he dashes forward, cutting all three of these dudes. They scream in pain for a brief second, before they fall into pieces, all dropping onto the floor. The villagers look surprised, as their blood starts pouring out onto the ground. The villagers, now no longer afraid, run forward towards the women, then they thank him. The man who was guiding him looks surprised. Yeonshin then asks where the Mantis sect is. The dude low-key forgot why he was here, and points to his side, saying they are over there. Yeonshin looks over, with his blade still out. He heads towards it, now standing directly in front of their signboard. He raises his foot, kicking the door completely open. As the dust begins to form, they all look over. Yeonshin slowly walks down the steps, greeted by a whole group of sect members. Yeonshin's eyes look disappointed. They start to surround him. One of them asks if he was the same one who killed their men on the street. Yeonshin glances up at the man, saying he is wearing a dragon robe, which should only be worn by the emperor. Yeonshin wonders if he is a rebel. The man tells the rest to stay out of this. He begins to unsheath his blade, saying it's been a while. While his intentions are noble, he chose the wrong place to show up at. Yeonshin asks what his name is. The man says there's no need to give his name to a person who is about to die. Yeonshin says he needs to know the name of the sect leader in order to claim it. The man begins to grin, then charges forward. Yeonshin can tell it's the swift sword. As the man begins to thrust at his neck, Yeonshin says he can sense the trajectory of his attack, wondering if it's because he's grown stronger. Yeonshin swings his sword, easily parrying the attack. It even causes the man to take a few steps backward. The man looks down at his blade, wondering why that had so much power in it. He looks anxious, but Yeonshin looks confident. The dude's men start to draw their blades. As he tells them to charge him, they begin to collapse on him, covering every single angle so he has no room to move. But Yeonshin makes it work, as he takes a slight step backward, avoiding a strike to his throat. He even retaliates, slicing one of them in the chest. He then parries an attack, immediately having to dodge the follow-up too. Yeonshin again returns with counterattacks, making light work of these dudes. He is easily dodging their attacks, with the minimum movement needed. As he notices that he can see all of their trajectories way in advance, so he knows exactly how to move. They once again attempt to surround him. He dodges underneath, stabilizing his lower body, then returns with a hilt strike to one of their faces. He again dodges underneath, weaving around all of their attacks, but not without countering, as we see one drop to the floor. He charges further into the group, cutting those in his way down. As he leaps over the last group while slicing them down, he lands before the sect leader, and looks very displeased, but bro is dropping a log in his pants. As his men's blood begin to fly throughout the air, those who were lucky enough to survive take a few steps back in fear. The sect leader starts to scream, asking what on earth is going on. Yeonshin starts to exhale, saying he was told to subdue him in front of his whole sect, so he will think of the sword in his hand as a fist. He begins to use the formidable wall once more, stomping forward. Now he is directly above Lardass. Yeonshin raises his sword into the air. The sect leader actually hits the Looney Tunes audible gulp. Yeonshin swings his blade forward. The shockwave destroys the ground behind the man too. As his body is falling in half, he goes to shit-talk him, then slumps backward onto the ground. Yeonshin then tells the rest of them that today, he will destroy their signboard. He glares back at them, wondering if they'll try to stop him. Much to my surprise, they actually do, as they call for them to get the Master Swordsman. Yeonshin asks if they are referring to the Blood Master Swordsman, and if the Blood Flame cult is behind them. They wonder how exactly he knew. Yeonshin grabs one of them by the throat. He starts to choke the man, saying to speak. He says that he's right, and he's probably asleep in the side building right now. Yeonshin wonders why he's sleeping, since if he detected a fight of this size then he'd be awake. On cue a sword flies straight in. Yeonshin blocks it with his causing it to pierce into the ground instead. Yeonchin looks forward as someone flies overhead. Landing by the sword, he pulls it out of the floor. Then laughs, saying he is pretty skilled. He didn't expect Yeonchin to deflect it. Yeonchin realizes his gut was right based on his hair. This man is indeed a Bloodmaster swordsman. We get a flashback to Ma Jin asking if he wants to be promoted to Blue Robe. Yeonchin says yes. Ma Jin smiles, then tells him 5. If he slays 5 Bloodmaster swordsmen, he'll be recognized as a Blue Robe regardless of age. The flashback ends with their WWE stare down. Yeonchin says he got lucky, and now he just has 3 more to go. The dude wonders what's up with his reaction, then starts pointing his blade at him. Yeonchin stomps the floor, going with formidable wall off the get-go. He starts making his way forward through it, and he and the swordsman clash blades. Yeonchin says he must end it here. Since he is in the middle of an enemy sect, the longer the fight goes, the worse his chances are. The swordsman tells him to go to hell, while raising his hand to prepare an attack. Yeonchin then begins to imbue his aura into his blade, stabbing him in the chest, as he used to the vortex from his new martial art. The dude can't believe he isn't letting him power up for 4 episodes. Yeonchin pulls his blade out, then begins to rotate, saying he refuses to listen to the dude's monologue too. The guy looks horrified, as his head gets cut off. Now it's flying through the air, and his body topples backwards. Yeonchin smirks, while the rest of the Mantis sect look confused. Yeonchin tells them to not even bother running, as he won't allow a single one to leave. They realize he is right. It jumps to some people thanking Yeonchin, as he has taken revenge for them. Even the man who guided him is there, crying, thanking him, saying he has brought peace to his dead daughter. Yeonchin thinks about it, asking how this happened in the first place, as this is the Jongnan sect's territory. He sighs and looks down at his daughter's corpse, saying that they are currently fighting against the Tyrant Sword tribe. Yeonchin asks if that is really the case, wondering if it's because of what happened. The man continues, saying it's why all of the martial arts schools under the Jongnan have gone up the mountain. As he starts to head out, he says that if they are up against the Tyrant Sword tribe, then everyone in the sect will have to risk their lives. It won't end with just 1 or 2 martial masters dying. He starts to recall his little sister, and realizes what he must do, as he has to go back to Jongnan. He explains that the 13 Skies is an unorthodox group that rules over the unorthodox faction. The Desolate Fortress's interference is necessary. A lot of credit can also be claimed by taking the heads of the Tyrant Sword tribe's martial masters. Ma Jin would allow for this too. As he continues walking, he asks if there's any traces of the battle maniac. It's silent for a second, then the bushes begin to rattle. Both Koenju and Yuyun come out from the bushes, walking right in front of Yeonchin. Koenju says it seems he wasn't at the Mantis sect. Yeonchin says that is a pity. Koenju then compliments his martial arts. He tells him he is the future Radiant Demon Squad, rather he might become the Divine Sword Squad leader. And he believes it will widen the Manhwa sect's horizon of knowledge too. Yuyun says the fact he only needed 5 moves is rent-free in his head. Yeonchin wonders why he cares so much, as Yuyun tells him he'd like to become friends. And he thinks he is interested in the martial arts of their sect too, also the Desolate Fortress isn't that far from them. Yeonchin stands there blankly, before telling him he doesn't have any reason to go to the Manhwa sect. Yuyun sweats wondering how to reply, but Yeonchin tells him he'll see him if he comes looking for him. Though he must learn a new martial art before visiting him each time. Back at the inn, Yeonchin is carrying his bag in, and the rest all stare at him. Chungmyung says the air around him has changed. Myri Ao says it looks like he got slashed on his back, and she'll apply some medicine for him. Ma Jin gets to the point, asking how the mission went. Yeonchin takes his bag off, and puts it on the table again. They all look down at it, again it's another head. This cannot be sanitary. Ma Jin says it was another Bloodmaster swordsman. Chungmyung says he just proved what happened in Zenping County wasn't a fluke. Ma Jin says he wonders what's going on. They made another move and this time stationed a Bloodmaster swordsman, somewhere unusual. In any case, he tells Yeonchin he did something great, it feels like problems are following him around. Yet he's dealt with them smoothly and brought back some good intel too. Yeonchin thinks about it, saying he has something to say. Ma Jin asks what it is. Yeonchin tells him he'd like to go to the Zenping Mountain. Ma Jin asks why, and he says it's because he is worried about his nephew's safety. Low-key thought she was his little sister, not sure. Ma Jin says he just heard the news too, but it's dangerous right now. The Tyrant tribe is completely different from the Blood Flame cult. Myri Ao says they use traditional martial arts and sorcery. So he can think of them as people who have gone crazy to get stronger. Ma Jin agrees with her, and since they've not received any missions they need to do what they have been tasked with. Chung Myung says a captain could also give orders for a mission if they deem it necessary. Myri Ao and the rest are just kinda confused why he's pointing it out. Ma Jin says that he'll be honest, he can't send him to Zhongnan without knowing if he'll make it back or not. Yeonshin asks what he means. Ma Jin says that anyone in the fortress who knows his true value would be worried about it. Chung Myung says it can't be helped that people want to recruit him, and his blood relations don't help with the situation. Also, he was just invited to the MANHUA sect too. Myri Ao and Wanchang both agree that he's right, but Yeonshin doesn't seem happy. Asking Ma Jin how he is incapable of separating a personal matter with a business one, besides he surely has built enough trust here within their group. He has shown clearly now what he is capable of, and to let him go, while recording it as a solo mission. Chung Myung says that looks like checkmate. Myri Ao hits him in the side for the shitty joke. Ma Jin, though, says he is right. He cannot refute what he said, so he'll let him go if he can take one of his attacks. Yeonshin looks locked in, ready to do what he must. But Myri Ao and Chung Myung try to talk Ma Jin out of this. But Ma Jin double downs, saying it's just a single attack, he can parry or dodge it. Myri Ao says that's too much. Ma Jin continues, saying that in order to stand at the top of the Zhonghu, one must at least be competent. So if he is able to handle one of his attacks, he will give him a separate reward too. With zero hesitation, Yeonshin says bet. A bit later outside, we see some students of the MANHUA sect there too. Koen juangs him for the chance to watch. He then turns towards all of the disciples, telling Yu Yun that this is a great chance to see the technique of the Radiant Demon Squad captain. Yu Yun says he thought that the Desolate Fortress's Black Robe Master is on the same level as him. Koenju says that is right, additionally he's a bit stronger in close quarters than him too. And that his nickname is the Hell Slaughterer, which means he rules the battlefield. There are quite a number of reputable clan elders who were killed by him after committing atrocities. So for someone like Ma Jin, even the slightest movement of his hand holds great meaning. Because that single attack could end a life instantly. Unlike martial artists of the 9 sects who seek the pinnacle of swordsmanship, Ma Jin pursues pure combat prowess. So even Yeonshin will have a hard time withstanding this single attack. Yu Yun says that he doubts anyone his age can take an attack from a master like him then. Yeonshin looks at Ma Jin, then asks if he can have some time. Ma Jin tells him to take as much as he needs. Since he will be using a martial art that a white robe cannot handle. So he needs to ready himself for it. Yeonshin explains that there are less than 30 black robe martial masters in the Desolate Fortress. But there is no need for him to be nervous. He just has to show him what he's learned. He places his hand on his blade. And starts to focus, and he can sense the aura coming off from Ma Jin. Then tells him he will let him have the first move. Ma Jin begins to smirk, Yeonshin readies himself. Ma Jin raises his hand as a lightning-like aura begins to envelop it. Yeonshin realizes a palm strike on this level can probably break through most fortress walls, so he needs to dodge. Ma Jin takes a step forward, instantly closing the gap. He begins to swing his hand forward, Yeonshin watches the attack, and understands he can't escape with any of his mobility arts. The blue ring appears on his head again, because it's time to create a new art. As the attack starts to come towards his head, Yeonshin says he needs to take just a single step. As the circle is now on his dantian. The attack continues coming, Yeonshin waits for his moment. Then raises his foot off the ground, he moves so fast it leaves an after image. With him now being behind Ma Jin, the attack generates a shockwave. Myri Ao, Chung Myung, and Yu Yun, pretty much everyone is surprised. Even Ma Jin looks like he didn't expect this as he takes his hand off the ground. He asks Yeonshin what that mobility art was called. Yeonshin thinks about it, saying that he simply walked, because he saw that was the way for him to survive, amidst the flow of energy. So he shall name it the evading swift step. Ma Jin smiles slightly, then says he permits him to travel to Zhongnan. If you've watched till the end, comment, cowboy, to let me know. Subscribe for more videos like this, leave a like or a comment to help the channel out. Thanks for watching.